a lot of value in moving them, but if there is a lot of feedback coming in from the community, I'm happy to revisit that.
Well, it did come up, but it's not been recurring, so...
Okay.
Yeah,
we are monitoring it now that we've put up the signs. It's the one thing that we are doing now to see what effect it's having.
Yeah.
So we are doing that as well.
And there was talk of trouble with the electronic signs and the overhead wires. Was that a bit of a problem?
That's more of a logistics around installing them, making sure we've got safe practices in place.
Yep.
But we've got that in hand.
Great.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you for your work.
Cool. Thanks. Anything else on that, James? Okay.
About that and about the concerns from some residents about the signs being too close to the intersection, and he's on board with that. Yep.
Yeah. I think if any people have traffic issues like that, I'd welcome you, and I think Jason would, time-wise, if he can manage it, to go straight to him with that, because I think the traffic unit's become very good at sorting those things out or getting onto them quite quickly. Yep. Now we're on to CBD seating. Gary.
Thank you. I assume this is a matter of people antisocial behaviour in seats. Is that the issue?
That's essentially it, yeah. Sometimes it's people
because
sleeping on them. It's not. There's different sorts of activity.
But a base for socialising is not a reason to move someone on by law, is it?
It depends what sort of socialising they're doing.
So, the issue is antisocial, but well, whatever the law is, I think it's antisocial behaviour. I don't know, swearing and intimidating people would be the issue, wouldn't it?
Look, Gary, I've certainly had reports about that myself, and as have staff. There's been sleeping on the seats, which goes into the not a good look category, but there's also been accusations of drug dealing on the seats, for instance, which is illegal.
Which is antisocial.
Well, it's illegal, but it's also
dead right against the law, yeah. So, I mean, I guess the issue is just, because I'd be horrified if we let a whole lot of scumbags cause us to pull out seating. It's just a matter of policing it, isn't it?
Well, and that's the point I'm making, that moving people on before we get to the point of these requests to remove the seats, which is perhaps an unwarranted outcome.
So what would be the process in terms of, we've got our own city safe people who go and mitigate some stuff and do a pretty good job, but they are limited in A, numbers, and B, in their authority or power to do stuff. So at what level do they or we elevate it up to the police, and do the police react?
I might ask Kelvin to talk to that, and that's certainly been part of discussions.
Yeah, so that's exactly the issue, that all the activities that we've described, whilst they may be not, the term not a good look, they're not illegal until such time you can prove that they are, obviously swearing and fighting and those things are, but we have limited capacity. We use all of the abilities we can in terms of influence, waking people up, asking them to move on and doing those things. And that's, as you say, if we see them, we do, or we respond if we can see it on camera, or if we get complaints. And we would encourage people to ring the City Safe number directly, and we can go and act. It is then when it gets to the point that, as you said, when it becomes intimidation. James is probably clearer on this than I am. Intimidation, where it becomes violent and no behaviour that would escalate to the police. And we'd encourage people to contact on that basis. Okay,
thanks.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, just by way of explanation there, this arose after a request from a Ward Street retailer to move a seat there, and my feeling about it was, rather than us acting in an ad hoc way of responding to these and pulling out seats left, right and centre because of antisocial behaviour, my feeling was that we should be looking at what is our policy on this, because I'm of the same mind. I think it's a bit silly to be pulling seats out all over the place because of this. It came up in the Central City Safety and Councillor O'Leary's committee, and Vanessa Williams from the CBD Association, her view on it was that going forward we could be looking at actually where we put seats, rather than having seats right outside shops, we could actually be looking at areas where we would put seats, not right next to shops, but in public spaces. So that was really my feeling for putting it on the agenda today, that we kind of need a policy on it, or at least a view on it, rather than ad hoc responding to all these complaints as they come up.
Yeah. I'm just wondering where that next goes. So obviously, Kelvin's people keep an eye on the existing seats and how they are managed, let's say.
Can I add to that? Councillor O'Leary, I'm not sure your view on this, but as part of the CBD safety plan, it was something we were looking at progressing through that, possibly. Coming back to council with a view on where seating could go.
I think that could be quite good. We'd be happy at this committee to receive a policy recommendation about how that could be handled from now on. Can we make a note in the minutes that we'll refer that to the CBD safety working group? Was that what it's called? I can't remember the names.
Pretty much.
What is it?
Central City Safety Plan Task Force.
I'll take your word for it.
Are you sure?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Hamilton Central City Safety Plan Task Force group.
Well, we call ourselves
of extraordinary people.
So we'll receive back from you some stage when you're ready, hopefully soon, a recommendation on policy, and that can come through either a special report or one of the GM's reports, if that's all right. Thanks for that. And sorry, I've got James and then Mark.
Yeah, we can't seriously look at removing seats from the central city, for God's sake. You know, like there's not just our vagrants that use them to sleep on, whatever else. You know, we've got a lot of elderly that come to town and have to sit down every now and then, you know, when they're walking around, or mum with their kids. So we can't look at removing seats from the central city. And if you're going to look at, you can't have them in the outside a store, but there's stores all around the place. Where are you going to put them, down the riverbank? So look, you're going to have a look at it and strategically, if you're going to want new seats, put them somewhere. But you know, there were complaints from Victoria Street where they had the bus stop outside the scullery. I spoke to a few shop owners there who had problems, and the shelter was removed because the vagrants are sitting in there doing a lot of antisocial behaviour. So since the shelter's been removed, but there's a seat placed there, that problem's gone.
I was going to mention that one myself.
Yeah.
So there are more ways than one to skin a cat in that sort of area.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thanks, James. Mark?
Yeah, these are all discussions we're actually having in that task force, James. The Central City Safety one. Another idea that's come up is the idea, I think Andrew had it, or Mayor Andrew rather, of leaners as opposed to seats as well, which are, you know, quite modern and swanky and serve a pretty cool purpose. But speaking to Jeff's point earlier on, there are plenty of spaces where you could put those seats if you were to put them outside public spaces, like both ends of Garden Place, Civic Square, Victoria on the River. There's quite a plethora of seating opportunities as well if shopkeepers didn't want them outside there. So there's tons of ways of skinning the cat, but I'd encourage everybody to come along to that task force and we can have a good old, you know, round table about it and kick it around.
Can we make sure that that's noted to people when the next meeting's coming up, Angela?
I think that governance do send them to everyone.
Okay. Yeah. Right, that's good. Okay, thanks for that. So the last one was water draining off private properties onto neighbouring properties. Jeff asked me to put this on here, but it was something that several others of us have also received complaints about over the years. Jeff, did you want to say anything more about that bit?
I don't remember asking you to put this one on. I remember asking you to put the seat one on.
Two of them. Two different emails sent late at night.
It must have been very late at night, this one. No, look,
It's all right. No, it's all right.
I've had an issue of this in Glenview recently, and they seem to be really hard to resolve. Because the rules around it, as we were talking the other day, are pretty hard to enforce, or very hard to enforce, and it's a real headache.
Yeah, I did ask Kelvin if he'd also talk on this.
So generally what this is obviously with increase in infill and with driveways down to back sections, often what you see is a change in either the gradients or the tar ceiling, as the case is in the report speaks to. Now, there is no rules around that in terms of the tar ceiling and the nature. It is simply a building code, which is central government. They have a guide, you know, a best how-to guide, but there is no rules around that, and we as council have no legislative responsibility or authority to enforce those best practice guidelines. So there is some interpretation issues around that and what role. Where it does come into play is when the movement of land or the movement of actual fill becomes greater than a certain amount of square cubics, and then it becomes about storm water runoff, and then we have the rights under resource consent movements. But the term in driveways are really just what's termed as landscaping, so they're very, we have no authority over landscaping, there's no code, there's no authority. So what we try to do, and this is where elected members have been helpful at times, is we've gone and worked with either neighbours to try and find solutions and provide that sort of guidelines, but there's certainly no authority we have in that space.
So it's a code with no ability to stick teeth on it. Martin, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some stage we won't do this issue with respect to Justice Day, because I think it raises a whole lot of issues around what we would expect of any developer relative to the properties, you know, on a lower slope, and you know, obviously have to differentiate between a natural drainage course that happens anyway through nature versus the degree to which a property development, particularly with our intensification. So I think this is a bit of an issue. And without tying people up in red tape, because that's another review we're running on, is wanting to get as I understand it, an appropriate standard that, you know, when someone submits a consent or a proposal for an intensive development, then there are some obviously drainage issues are addressed relative to potential impact on properties down the hill.
Correct, and generally, to put this in context, you know, we do have 1,300 dwellings a year being built, of which around 46% are infill, and we're talking, you know, we've seen an increase in this trend. It's not a flood. So excuse the pun. It's not a flood.
All I'm suggesting is I don't want to give you. I don't like obviously giving you extra work, but I genuinely think, first up, in terms of our workshop process, this would be a really good topic for us to get a bit of an update and to identify, you know, some point issues and to identify what further could be done, i.e. an advice to property owners or in terms of, you know, sign-off and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's an additional problem. It's not just when there are developments. You know, for instance, the case mentioned here, although it's a development now, when it started, it was simply some back sections putting a new seal on their driveway, which was higher than the previous one.
Yeah.
And they were all existing residents, so it created a neighbourly dispute, which we were dragged into. Yeah. So look, that's no other questions on the. Oh, sorry. Damn. Andrew, sorry.
Just a comment on your last line. It sounds like a James Bond martini. Shaken, not stirred.
Yes, jolly good shaker. Thank you. Siggy.
Yeah, just it's more a rhetorical question. I just wonder about the report, whether we could have no jibing remarks on it, and
Could have what? Sorry.
Jibing, is that the right word? Jibing, just remarks that don't need to be in the report, because we're trying to, you know, set a culture of. It's a public report.
Exactly,
and
that's
it could
why
be personally taken as well. So
thanks for your point, but I'll continue to use my flavour in my reports.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's my flavour. Councillors, this report was only for information and causing discussion, which we certainly had. The staff recommendation is that the report be received, this Growth Infrastructure Committee Chair's report be received.
Question though.
Oh,
very quick question. Mr. Cobley, is he on the electoral roll here or what?
Yeah,
I know he lives in Whitcomb and
He's next to Councillor Blind Freddie.
All right, well, yeah, that's interesting. I will look them up on the electoral roll.
Thank you. No other serious comments. I think the Mayor and Deputy Mayor are obviously getting bored. The recommendations the Growth Infrastructure Committee chairs receives the Chair's report. Seconded by James. Those in favour, against, carried. Thanks. We'll move on to the General Manager's report. So, okay, Siggy doesn't receive the report. She record her vote against, please. We've got the report on page 18. Now, who's going first? Kelvin, are you going to... We'll deal with these item by item. just by the bold headlines. So the first one is the housing and HIF report update. Yep.
Yeah, so effectively as it says there, we are working through the different scenarios and putting it together for the detailed business case by the 20th of December. As you recall, in our discussions with the long-term plan runs one course, and then this will be an input to the long-term plan as we work those scenarios up.
Any questions on, Mark?
Just one question. I'm not sure how much you can tell me about this at this stage, but there was that structure that Auckland were very keen on, where the Crown Fibre Holdings,
The SPV,
entity,
yep.
yeah, became a kind of a housing funder type thing.
So those, the work on that has gone a little quiet, and fortunately Blair is sitting there, but I'm not sure what the progress has been since we last had the discussion.
Interestingly, yesterday Crown Infrastructure Partners presented to the Mayoral Forum, and the topic of the SPV came up, and they are in the process of working through talking to council. So I've reached out to the chief executive there and made it very clear that they need to talk with us urgently. Right. So I expect that that'll happen very shortly.
Okay.
Obviously, they are working under government direction, but there's no specifics yet in terms of cabinet paper or policy. So it's certainly not a tool available to us immediately for the long-term plan, but it's something that we're absolutely actively going to talk with them about, keeping that opportunity available in the future.
And I'm meeting with Treasury officials tomorrow in Wellington, and one of the topics of conversation is the SPV and just continuing that dialogue.
Right.
And making numerous requests.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah. So, but your gut feel with 2 weeks to go to an election that they're trying to set up an entity, is that how confident are we that that's...
I think there's probably cross-party support for the idea of some vehicle.
Okay.
Both parties have major parties have discussed a form of vehicle. What they look like, I think, is for both parties still work through. The Treasury is doing a significant amount of work looking at the nuts and bolts of it. It will no doubt require some form of legislative change for this to happen, but that'll be determined based on what the nature of the ultimate entity looks like, whether it has rating powers, whether or not you put water assets in it, whether you can put water assets in it, and so forth. There's a whole lot of other stuff out of the way. So what we can say is we're working very hard to find out what's going on. We're working very hard to make sure it would be of benefit to Hamilton. Yep. But a lot of it's still unknown. And once we find out what it will look like, we'll make sure we report back to council straight away.
Right, because we've got to have our case in by December, so Treasury...
I think there's a clear message from an initial perspective that the SPV is probably for those projects that didn't meet the HIF threshold. Right. And whilst we're doing everything we can to influence them to be as broad as possible, that's the current message that we have.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Thanks. Gary, on the HIF?
Yeah, on the HIF. And this may be too pointed a question, so it's all right for you to evade it if you like. But would it be management's recommendation to us that we don't go ahead with the HIF if we can't get the funding into a special purpose vehicle? So if it came onto our accounts and blew our ratios and that sort of stuff, would it be your recommendation that we don't? And you may not have even considered that, so...
Look, it's too early for me to give you a response, but what I can say, Gary, is that through the long-term plan process, the work we're doing with the HIF, we're doing in parallel with the long-term plan process and various growth scenarios. We will bring that all to council in the coming month in terms of the detailed LTP analysis, the various the growth work, how it responds to how we would propose council could respond to growth infrastructure funding, and the HIF is very much part of that. So we're doing detailed evaluation on that. So just to be a bit granular in what you're saying, the 10-year plan might come forward with a whole lot of targeted rates, for example, which would fund these, the HIF, beg your pardon, the loan from the HIF, which might negate the need for the special purpose vehicle, though it's very unlikely that would be the case, but those are the sort of things that are floating around. We are examining through the long-term plan all available tools that we have, including the task force that Councillor Rob presided over. The SPV vehicle is not available for us to currently include in the LTP, but I think to Richard's comments, we're keeping all dialogue open there, so if that opportunity presents itself, we'd obviously want to include it. Okay. But at this stage, we're looking at everything that we have available to us, which is our traditional forms of funding infrastructure, the HIF loan, targeted rates, developer agreements, DCs, etc. So our knowledge and our thinking hasn't evolved quite enough yet to
say yes or no for some of these things, eh?
Oh, look, we are doing extensive modelling work, so we obviously have views emerging, but I think the key message here is growth infrastructure is expensive, and we are looking to find every way we can to make it work.
Blake, maybe you could explain the what you intend to bring back to council in terms of the options and so forth for growth. Not necessarily going into the details, we're still working that out, but how that looks.
Okay, sorry, and Andrew just...
Well, hang on, just let Blair go through that point and then come back.
Yeah, so myself, Kelvin and Chris have worked three different macro growth scenarios that we're modelling, and we're refining and looking to make those work. One of those is primarily based around the HIF application, so that is core in terms of our analysis, and we're looking to ensure that council can meet its obligations in terms of the NPS, in terms of delivering the appropriate supply of infrastructure to enable the housing to be delivered. And through that work, we are testing all those scenarios against our financial strategy, potential scenarios with regards to rates, targeted rates, levels of development contribution. So council will receive information that outlines a growth scenario that may be focused around HIF and peacocks, a growth scenario that may follow the more traditional sequencing and time around the city, a growth scenario that may respond in a different manner, so that we can basically show council we've tested a whole different series of scenarios as to how we may provide infrastructure and the financial implications of that, with a view to trying to find the best solution that meets what council's seeking, but also fits into our financial parameters. Noting, of course, that the whole LTP process is very dynamic, and you're still needing to make a number of decisions on a range of elements of the budget.
Sorry, and Andrew just reminded me that the special purpose vehicle is not legislated for yet anyway.
No, it's not.
So it's not, okay.
No.
And so what's the other thing that we did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thanks,
It's a bit hard, he's in my ear.
But I think, Gary, the simple message here is that management are working extremely hard to look at all feasible options. I mean, there's lots of conversation on special housing areas, the HIF, special purpose vehicles, working closely with developers. We're doing all of that, and that's all going into the mix in terms of what the team are looking at the moment.
Thanks, Blair. Rob.
Yeah, just following on from that, thanks, Chair. Just following on from that question about the SPV, hasn't there already been one in place? There was one set up for the ultra-fast broadband. And if so, are the government likely to replicate, if they offer that as part of the HIF approach, are they likely to replicate something similar to the one that they rolled out to help the ultra-fast contractors?
Certainly, that's the high-level strategic framework that they're talking about. So Crown Fibre Holdings has been repurposed as Crown Infrastructure Partners. So Crown Fibre Holdings was the government half of the fibre optic rollout, and they worked with private companies such as Chorus, Ultrafast Fibre locally, North Power up in Northland to deliver fibre. The premise that they're talking about with the special purpose vehicle is that Crown Infrastructure Partners, being the government half of the equation, would work with private investors, as yet unnamed, to deliver waters and transport infrastructure. Now, as Richard said, that's the ongoing conversations that he's having with Treasury tomorrow. Crown Infrastructure Partners are looking to reach out and talk to us in the coming weeks.
Richard.
The other aspect just to be aware of is that under the Crown Fibre Holdings, there was an obligation on the provider, once they had connections, to actually buy the asset. One of the things they try to work with the local government is the extent to which they can maintain this infrastructure off the balance sheet of the councils, which may mean they need to remove that obligation to buy. And so effectively it becomes more of a funding activity in the long term rather than bridging finance in the short term like it does with Crown Fibre Holdings. So there's some subtle nuances. The company does exist, but it would have to be repurposed to achieve what we need to achieve from a local government infrastructure perspective as
and
well.
I think the challenge, Richard, would be how that entity raises its money, whether it's via council, whether it's directly with the developer and the community. And of course, we need to be really conscious that any arrangement that implies a contractual obligation from council to another party potentially could give rise to a liability, which equals debt.
Yep.
And so
but presumably they could alter it around to say, well, as development contributions come in, in terms of the way that they receive funding back from the ultrafast the broadband rollout, they could do something similar with, DCs as they come in as being part of the contribution to repay the loan
Yeah, absolutely on the table for discussion. We think that makes sense. The other aspect is, remember, that DCs don't pay for all of the asset either. So it's about that proportionate asset.
Certainly a part of it does,
Yeah,
though, doesn't
yeah,
it?
hopefully. It's about proportionate asset ownership, or is it proportional revenue distribution? And they haven't, to be honest, we're learning as we go, and I think there's a degree that Treasury's trying to do their best by considering all the options as well. Okay. And what's really good is Treasury's more than happy to work with Hamilton, Tauranga and Queenstown, and I'm joining those other two chief executives tomorrow in Wellington to have those conversations, because we've all got the same issues. We have an agreement of minds in terms of some of the challenges, and if we can work together to provide it, hopefully we get an opportunity to influence the outcome in a way that's positive for us from a growth point of view.
Okay, thank you.
But point well made, Councillor Rob.
Yep, so, thank you.
Richard, I was just going to ask, once you've got a feel a bit more for what's going to come back from government, are we going to have another workshop to go through, have this sort of discussion with a bit more certainty? Yeah, at the moment I think I'm giving you an indication there's a lot of uncertainty. Yeah. Once we do have that certainty, yes. I understand from my preliminary conversations with Treasury is they were tasked by the national government to come back with a model by October, November. And at this stage they're pretty much in a due diligence phase, trying to work out exactly how this should work. A lot of great minds have been put onto it from both local government point of view. Auckland Council's significantly invested in resource providing their guidance as well, and we're pushing quite hard to make sure that we don't get overlooked as being the smaller player between ourselves and Auckland. That's why Queenstown, Hamilton and Tauranga have joined together. Once we get that position, we're going to bring it back to Council in terms of what it potentially could look like. And you know, there's a whole lot of other questions that I've asked Treasury about whether or not existing assets can be put into it. Is there other opportunities to free up capital? Does it have to be roads and water? Can amenity go in it and all that sort of stuff? So there's a whole lot of questions that have been asked. At this stage, they can't give us any answers because themselves are still working through that nuts and bolts aspects of it. Okay, thanks.
So I just had one other question which I had, and that is, as we're moving towards the HIF, you know, the December deadline and so forth, have NZTA and or MB, have they put sort of hurdles or pathways in place to sort of give us some confidence as you're moving through the various steps of putting together the business case and doing the sensitivity analysis and all the other things, that we're kind of ticking boxes as we go along to see whether or not the pathway that we're heading down is likely to get to a point where we will get approval, or is it very much a hold your breath, here's our business case, here's all our sensitivity analysis, and have MB come back on the last day of approving or whatever of our application and saying, look, sorry, you guys don't get there, so you're not getting anything, or yes, you get there, but we're left with perhaps some challenges that we may not want?
Ultimately, we won't know the outcome of our process until post-December, and it goes into both NZTA and MB's approval processes, and then up to the Minister. But what I can say is that Hamilton, I think, is working extremely well with both those parties. We've got a meeting, is it tomorrow or Thursday, one of the two. We have a regular meeting with the key executives from those two entities. We've hit every milestone. In fact, we've been probably...
Milestone, that's a better word.
We've been prompting them on the milestones ahead of them prompting us.
Yep.
So I think we're taking a very proactive approach. We've assembled an excellent consultants team who are, in my view, the information we're providing to those two organisations is first class. And the feedback that Kelvin and I are receiving is very, very positive in terms of the engagement and the information. So I guess if you take the informal direction, it's positive, but we can't give any certainty to it.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but at least we've got a degree of confidence as we're going along that we're not heading into the wind and finding that if we don't get over the line, we won't be surprised. We will not say, well, we expected that's probably where we would land anyway.
My sense is that Hamilton's taken a reasonably strong leadership role in terms of the HIF, in terms of helping them go forward as well, which I think is positive.
Okay.
Just one other comment to your earlier question, Councillor Rob. The Council are going to have a briefing on the 29th of September, I understand, and that's the time when we'll be able to share with you the growth scenarios that I referred to earlier, including the modelling of the HIF and the modelling of the various scenarios and what it means for how much growth infrastructure we can deliver, what it looks like at a high level in terms of financial parameters, the timing of that infrastructure, the various parts of the city, things such as discussions we have with the NZTA over the level of FAR subsidy that we may be able to attract for the HIF-related Peacock's transport infrastructure. So that's all part of that discussion on the 29th of September.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mayor Andrew.
Just a comment on the SPV. It was very much aimed at Hamilton and Tauranga as well as Auckland. And at the announcement, we were invited, the Mayor of Tauranga and the Mayor of Hamilton were invited to the announcement as a part of the announcement by the Prime Minister. It was very much a initiative that was aimed at these three Golden Triangle councils. So we were clearly a part of their thinking at that stage and still are. Thanks.
Okay, let's go on to Blair. You're also doing, I think, the strategic regional collaboration.
Yes, I have. Councillor Dave,
any
happy to take questions.
Questions on anything up to the end of, up to before Access Hamilton.
Sure.
Includes the water delivery on page 21 as well as the other items there. So, are there any questions? Oh, sorry, I'm not looking here. Gary, of course.
On page 19, paragraph 9, bullet point of the first dot, it finishes off with delivering multi-million-dollar cost savings through collaboration. Just wonder, and I have in the past seen update, like a breakdown of what those things are, and this is not an urgent thing, but it would be useful to have something a little more detailed than multi-million-dollar. So when the pressure comes off somewhere along the line, could something like that come to, this committee or finance or something like that, just so we can keep a tack on.
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So just so members can get some visibility on what we actually mean by these things.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good point. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Martin.
Sorry, what are we up to the Waikato plan yet, or?
Yeah, that's part of this section under the heading strategic regional collaboration.
The strategic waters, that's further down, is it?
They are all in part of this from paragraph 17 to paragraph 20 inclusive.
Okay, I've two questions. One, obviously, the Waikato plan, and I just note the very large governance structure, and I assume the Mayor will be conveying that to the group. I think it's about as big as the Auckland Council.
Can I just assist with that, Councillor Gallagher? Obviously, there's a meeting next Monday to ratify the members for the leadership group, and Hamilton's views via Mayor Andrew have been well canvassed in terms of our view that the number should be less than the maximum of 20, and there's certainly the terms of reference adopted include a clear point that the structure will be reviewed within 12 months of the numbers to be reduced down to 12. So that's noted. Everyone's well aware of that, and I'm sure that that will come up again on Monday when they discuss the nominees for the leadership group.
Do you think the other partners are aware, given the vote? I acknowledge the vote in this council recently was somewhat finely balanced. We had one member bring a coffee table into the chamber, which I couldn't work out.
It's just waiting outside to come in again.
But it seems to me that I just want to have open communication with our partners that the numbers here there is serious scepticism around the size of that governance process.
Yes, I can assure you that I'm calibrating all of their views around that actively.
Very diplomatic answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll save that. Just the other question
is
on the water, just noting on the Waikato November 2017, is that just means that they're still engaged with some processes with water care and that?
Yes, so Waikato District Council...
Blair, sorry to interrupt, Blair. It might be handy, since we had a meeting yesterday, just to give a little update.
Thank you. No, that's
which includes that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dave.
Sorry.
So the governance... I'll talk about where our governance group got to yesterday. So first and foremost, Waipā District Council, their governance group met a few weeks ago, and they indicated their strong desire to consult the public pre-Christmas in terms of the proposed shared waters management company, which was the entity that this council by majority also preferred. they would like to understand at a strategic level whether their community supports the concept of forming a shared waters management company. Waikato District Council have indicated they won't make a decision as to whether they support a shared waters management company or continue their path for an asset-owning CCI until about November this year. So they're working through a process with Watercare and Tainui to understand what that model may look like. And so their time frame is slower than our process. The Hamilton Waters Governance Group, which was Mayor Andrew, Councillor Dave and Councillor Gary, yesterday indicated that they would like to also consult with our public pre-Christmas on the concept of the Shared Waters Management Company at a strategic level to test with the public whether, again, there is support for us to form in conjunction with Waipa and also leaving the door wide open for Waikato District Council and any other council who wishes to join that same entity in the future. Now, the process from here is going to be that I'll bring a report back to this council as soon as possible to outline the form of a strategic engagement on the Shared Waters Management Company and the time frame for that consultation process. And that will then be for this council to decide whether you support that consultation and whether you support the form of the consultation document. The governance group direction was not to get into the details, the specific details of exactly all the governance arrangements, how the Shared Waters Management Company would operate. If there is public support for the concept, then we would come together post the consultation in the new year with Waipa to work through those details, assuming Waipa also supported that. So that was a direction from our discussion yesterday.
I might just add that it was felt that since Waipa was already determined to do that consultation, it would look odd if this council, who was potentially going to join with them, didn't do that at the same time with a similar sort of document. So that was what drove that particularly.
Yes, that's right. And I'm going to obviously make it very clear to Waikato the door remains absolutely open for them, despite their time frame being slower, Councillor Gallagher, that they are free to join our process and/or observe our process and can join at a future date.
No.
A couple of comments I'll say for general, very briefly for general debate. Thank you.
And that item is too soon to bring it back.
Sure,
so it's
absolutely.
Going to be a
That's
week or two. Yeah.
It's a very helpful update, though. Thank you.
Sorry, I've got Mayor Andrew. Then we're going to break for morning tea after the end of paragraph 20 and come back partway through this report. Mayor Andrew.
So just to go back to the Waikato plan document and the members on there, it was strongly argued for 7 or 8 members on there, and it got pushed up to 12, and even at 12, I don't believe that it can work. I would see it as an independent chair, 1 person from local government. We've so far already got 5 on there, and I'd see that as regional council chair, who is an umbrella over all of us, and then 6 members of iwi is ridiculous. We need 1, I would have thought, for it to work properly. And then over business, I'd imagine you'd just have 1, which would be Waikato Means Business, the chair of Waikato Means Business, who would bring feedback through that channel. And then your government agencies, I don't believe there should be any limit on how many, because they're the ones who this is aimed at. They're the ones who we're trying to get the checks out of, the money out of. And by limiting it down to 4, it makes no sense to me either. We want every single leader of every single government agency to be a part of this, because they're the ones that we're targeting this at. But they obviously don't have voting rights. So that's sort of a steer on where I would like to see it go. And
as our representative, Mayor, would you, at that first meeting, ask for a 12-month review in 12 months' time of governance?
I think they're very aware of that, and I think Blair's making that very clear as well.
It's already in the terms of reference, Martin, and I continually remind members at every occasion.
Thank you for those answers.
Okay, thanks everyone. Look, if we break until come back at 1:15 by that clock up there, so it's about 17 minutes. Thanks very much. call the meeting back again. We are going to finish off this report, and and we may juggle the order of the meeting after that. But we've got the Access Hamilton Task Force update. Are there any questions or comments on that? That's noting that report, the full report from that task force is coming to the next one of these meetings. We're still doing some work. Okay, parking task force update. Jeff, you wanted to give a bit of a rundown there.
Yeah.
Jason's here as well. Jeff?
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The parking task force, I think, has actually met twice, I believe, since the last G&I meeting, and the main thrust of that has been finalising a comms plan ahead of the October 1st rollout of 2 hours free in the CBD. And it sort of entails an advertising campaign and also the use of what we would call parking ambassadors for the first couple of weeks or so to basically patrol the CBD streets and help people, tell them what's going on, download their apps or show them how to download their apps, etc. So that's work is going on there, and in fact we're talking with a community group actually who are really keen on taking that on as a possible fundraiser, and so that could work really well. And of course the app, as we know, will be a key to the whole thing. It will help guide people to the vacant parks and allow them an easy way to pay. So the task force will probably meet twice more before, once possibly twice before October the 1st, and then we are planning to meet weekly for the first month, possibly 2 months, just to make sure we're on top of everything and monitoring it.
Thanks, Jeff. Jason, was there anything you wanted to address in this?
No, just happy to take any questions if there are.
Yep, thanks. Gary?
Thank you. And this is out of the category of I hope the right hand knows what the left hand is doing situation. Just earlier this week, a number of councillors went down to Hinimoa Park and looked at discussed possible outcomes for that. But the issue that I would like to just flag is that there's a significant number of car parks down there, which I understand are free car parks available without monitoring, and those would clearly be a significant benefit to the CBD. Some of the discussion, and this is all very loose discussion, so I'm not claiming that the risk is imminent. Some of the discussion was about possibly altering that parking there, or even removing it to increase the green space or connection with the stadium and all that sort of la-di-da stuff. I just want to flag that, and Jeff, perhaps with you guys, you just need to keep an eye on that, because I would suggest, we're nickel and diming one car park here and 2 car parks there. I guess, I don't know, I asked the staff to give us a number of car parks. I don't know, but I would suggest you probably got upwards of 100 there. I mean, everything you want to gain from your 2 car parks here and here could be blown away by the loss of that parking.
So rather than commenting on that exactly, can we be assured that it's on the agenda for discussion?
Yeah, it just needs to be flagged.
Park, I think, and the pit lane around
the
the
that's
corner.
exactly where. Yeah. I think Martin calls it the the V8's Memorial Car Park or something like that. Yeah. Very distasteful. Very distasteful.
Temporary life.
Okay.
So we can make sure that factored in. Thanks. And I've got, sorry, Leo.
Yeah, I noticed that under 26, concerning the parking task force, there's a communications plan going out. What's going to be the cost of this? Does anybody know?
Jason?
Yes, we've allowed a budget of 25,000 for the comms rollout.
And yet under 30 we've got there's no financial implications.
So it's for all part of we had $730,000 allocated to this project in the current LTP, and as part of that we've identified the project costs, and as part of that the comms allocation has been 30,000, of which
I think
25
Leo's referring to the wording here, which is probably unfortunate. The wording should say there is no additional to the budget given so-and-so. Something like that is a better way of probably expressing that. Leo, was that what you were concerned about?
That's what I was concerned about, because, we're going to have flyers and radio advertising and print advertising and all that sort of stuff to go with the campaign. And yet under 30 it's got no financial implications in relation to the information provided.
Yeah, my
So
apologies.
there are, but they've already been dealt with over there, but we just need to clarify that when we put those, I've seen that comment before, when there actually are financial implications, just that they're conditional.
Chairman, just a comment, I think that it's a general report on a number of issues, so that report, we're not asking council to make any decisions, it's just receiving the report. So I think that's, that comment's related to all the items in the General Manager's report.
Yeah, and there's probably financial implications on all of them, actually. So I think it's put in there as a form statement, but it's probably not reflecting a reality. We just need to word it differently. Okay, are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, someone's been added. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, Councillor Mallet raised a very valid, relevant point, and that is the issue of commuter versus shopper car parks. And I'm just wanting to get clarification through the chair or yourself as to going forward what sort of ongoing analysis is being done. Obviously, you want to encourage commuters to use public transport and other areas, and we have adjacent car parks. Is there much work going to be done on the predictor of what commuter parking needs will be?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Helpful. It's been a topic constantly on the task force's discussions, and we've come to the point now where that's why we're setting up weekly monitoring things, just to see what happens, because we could easily preempt stuff that might not happen. We're pretty sure that people who at this stage may be cheekily rorting the system, i.e. commuters moving their cars, etc., they will find a way, like water finding its way to the lowest point, and we just have to wait to see where those lowest points are, and that's why we're doing the regular monitoring.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting another car park building, but I'm interested just in terms of the long-term strategy.
Yep.
Around the numbers on, when you look at a certain population of people working in the CBD and what proportion you'd expect to have to provide the car park facilities, do the ride share, do the buses, all of that stuff, but ultimately you still have a certain X number of
yes, you do.
all-day parking, yeah.
You do, and then that's pretty much in every discussion, isn't it, Jeff?
Right.
Yeah. Can I just respond to Mr. Chair? Yeah, and that's certainly in our minds, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and the task force has actually started looking at the possibility of creating extra off-street car parking areas and how we can best go about doing that. There was some initial discussion about creations of park and rides, for instance, possibly using Clauden's Park as a park and ride or a walk and ride sort of thing. So that is on our agenda, definitely. I think I agree with Councillor Bunting. It's probably a good idea to have a look and see how it shakes down. But we certainly need to be responsive, to the issue of where the commuters park. Yeah.
Rather than having a further discussion here, could I urge councillors interested in this to come along to these meetings, which we've got a bit of a schedule already, because there are some quite good strategic discussions now being held in that area. Are there any other questions? If not, I'm going to put the staff recommendation on page 18, which is just that the Growth and Infrastructure Committee receives the General Manager's report, seconded by Councillor Mark. Is there any discussion? And there is from the Deputy Mayor.
Well, only very briefly. As you all know, that I have a very apolitical, neutral position, and have had for some time. But obviously, with a number of these things, particularly in the Waikato Plan, housing, HIF program, if there is a government of a different complexion in 2 weeks' time, or even the current government, but the current government might have to have a brand new coalition partner. So therefore there will, either way you look, there's going to be different flavours, there's going to be a change of flavour. I just want to make the point that once we know the change of that flavour, then it's going to be very crucial for our staff and our Mayor and councillors to recalibrate and be crystal clear that across all of these areas that we are, if you like, tuned in to where a government of whatever colour is going. In other words, in two weeks' time, you could have a total change of the rule book.
I think Martin's made a good point. We've discussed that at future-proof discussions. We think that they've jumped the gun by trying to rush out the first part of it now, but there is a phase 2 scheduled to be discussed anyway, so that will be able to cover off, early next year any changes that are coming through with national policy statements that might be different, that sort of thing. If there's no other discussion, I'm going to put that resolution. Those in favour, but raise their hands. Against. Was that favour this time? Okay. It was just a slow hand. So, okay, thanks. That's unanimous. Sorry. Now, okay, we're going on to. Jason was cursing because Vanessa arrived. We're going on to the HCBA report from Vanessa and her team. Vanessa, come on up. And the report, councillors, is on page 24 of your agenda. And we're going to go straight into Vanessa talking to it. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Hi. So you'll obviously have the report. So I've got a number of bullet points I can go through.
Just wondering, sorry, if you could bend down the microphone just a little bit to get a bit quiet.
Allow for the short people of the world. Okay, we can hear.
Not, yeah, be as loud as Vanessa.
I'll try. Okay, so I'll just run through what we've been up to for that 12-month period. So our key points, I'll note the CBD is high with development currently going on. Our estimated worker increase in the central city with these developments is around 1,700, which will overall mean closer to 2,000 with the clients and the customers if these places taken into account. Accommodation options on the fringe of the city are growing, and there's a high demand for high-end options. Old building stock and earthquake proofing is still an issue. The board has undergone a big refresh to ensure better representation across the business sector. Our Neat Places is a big win for the city, highlighting key places in retail and hospitality. We are opening up communication channels with a new website, revamp of the newsletter, a launch of a closed Facebook for businesses, which came through. A lot of our businesses wanted some closed communication internally, and the prominent location, which we're really proud of now for meetings and drop-ins. Our collaboration projects have been a big win, with us working with the Ham Waikato Tourism on Neat Places, our host program, which is in development, the Chamber co-hosting of events, the Property Council, Export New Zealand, and of course the Ham City Council, and our recent CBD Awards, which were a huge success. It was a really great opportunity for businesses to be recognised for the contribution that they make to the revitalisation of our city.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Vanessa, were you going to add anything now? No?
No, that summed it all up lovely.
We've got a number of questions, starting with Councillor Mark.
Cool. First of all, hey, great work. Thank you for what you're doing. I love the idea of that host program and the exciting stuff in the future. That's really, really neat. There's been a lot of talk. I'm getting a lot of feedback about the newspaper story recently about District Council moving over to Kmart. Can you give us any information on that, or do you know anything about that?
So the discussion that I have had, it's very much in its stages of going through the formal agreement and what that will mean, and obviously it would be a great thing for the city to have them over here and represented over in the Kmart building, but yeah, they're working through the paperwork on that at the moment. Okay, so it looks like it probably is going to happen, or? I would say indications are at this stage that it's looking like it will happen.
And how many staff is that? Because it's more than just the one building over there, isn't it?
Around between 300 and 500 staff.
Okay, cool. And is there any implication, I mean, I know it's very early, but is there any implication on what that would mean for the night markets underneath that building at all? Or?
No discussion that I have been a part of on that so far.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jeff.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, welcome. And first, I just want to start with a little apology. When I was talking about the CBD parking plan, I omitted to mention the role that the CBD, the retailers, will be playing as part of the sort of ambassadorial thing. They're getting right in behind it. So Vanessa and Sarah, congratulations on your pimped up awards. A couple of weeks ago, I thought
it's
it was
a great description.
I thought it was a fantastic night, and I made sure I stayed there till the end. Is that good? I just had a question about the continuing challenges on page 26, old building stock in the CBD. Can you just expand on that a little bit, the situation as it is, and also what, if any, discussions are going on with some of the property owners there, and are there any tools at our disposal or your disposal?
It's probably a very brief description that I've put there, but certainly in some of the discussion I've had with the commercial agents, there is an increased demand on smaller, more boutique retail spaces, and that has meant for some of our larger ground floor previous retail spaces, they're actually of an older style, you know, that is not the demand. So the places that you may see that are vacant, generally the rationale is they're just not meeting the needs of what, particularly in that retail space, is required at the moment. And obviously there are some challenges of, you know, around the earthquaking, getting the buildings up to spec.
Right. So they're too big, a lot of them, essentially? Or?
Some of that retail space is too big for what the demand is, and it is that smaller boutique style.
Yeah, okay. The other question I had was just about, on page 28, City Attraction Campaign.
Yes.
And look, the one above Hamilton Host, I think that's terrific. With the City Attraction Campaign, how does that fit into the work that the Hamilton, what's the website called? Hamilton Invest and Waikato Story. How does this fit into it? And is it perhaps the role of the CBD Association to be trying to attract the businesses, or should it be a larger entity doing it?
So I mean, the discussions that we've had have been with our members wanting to feel that they're appropriately represented. So, you know, within Hamilton Invest, you know, Waikato is the bigger picture, Hamilton Invest is smaller, and then the CBD is smaller again. So it's just making sure that our members are represented in being part of, you know, attracting into the city. How it looks in terms of a campaign is probably detail we haven't yet worked through, but it's something we want to look through for the next year. How can we make the CBD look as attractive and positive for business investment that we can?
Right, so it's about the CBD members being part of the overall pitch, or involved in the overall
absolutely
region-wide pitch.
Yep, being represented and making sure that the best foot is put forward for the CBD, and what is good about being in the CBD, and who would be appropriate to be within the CBD, and the businesses coming in like potentially the Environment Waikato and the DHB and Genesis and ASB, and the part that they all play in making the city a more attractive proposition for workers.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Gary.
Thank you for your presentation, and my questions sort of trigger off a bit of what Jeff was talking about. I'm just, and concern is the wrong word, but I just hope you're aware that there's a lot of the things that you look like you're trying to do here, other people are doing anyway, and I'm not saying, so, you know, there's a lot of stuff you don't have to do, just copy, like, I know that we, Kelvin nowadays does a monthly thing on the business, and now it might be a slightly more macro view than what you're talking with, but you know, a lot of the stuff in that will have value for you, and I'm just thinking, you know, the tourism, you know, talking to Jason, who's here somewhere, you know, the City Council itself does a lot of stuff, and I'm not too sure if this is what you're alluding to, Jeff. Graham Dwyer, what's the new thing?
Agenda Waikato.
It is called Agenda Waikato. Yeah. Okay, yep, cool. So there's an awful lot of stuff there, which I'd hate to see it being done twice or three times, particularly when it's with public money. So just be very wary that there's a lot of this stuff has been done for you, and all you've got to do is pick up the phone and ring someone, and they'll give it to you for free, probably.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, in highlighting all of these things, these are all things that within our membership have been highlighted that we need to be involved in or a part of. So, certainly not look to reinvent the wheel on any of this. No duplication. So we have been very much in contact with, you know, people like Graham Dwyer. I sat down with him from Agenda Waikato the other day. Told him the things I was interested in. He told me the bigger plans of what they're interested in, because I agree that duplication is a waste of everyone's
We need
time.
to be careful that we don't. I mean, you know, there's a heck of a lot of people and groups, all with the best intentions in mind, all trying to do the same thing, and they're all going to be standing on each other very shortly. And I just wonder if were you here when we were talking about the car parks by the Hinimoa Park?
Yep.
They are primarily, I assume, people who are working in either Frankton or the CBD parking, is that right?
Oh, I don't have
Do you know?
data on that to
okay.
know 100%. Yeah, I wouldn't know the breakdown of
Okay.
who uses them.
I'm just concerned that we could, if we do lose those, that we may be scoring an own goal in that case.
Yeah. Councillor Rob, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. The first question is on page 26. You mentioned in there about Garden Place being one of the, I think you've got the concept plan developed. Is that the concept plan that Messrs Stark and McLennan have?
Just arrived to discuss.
Oh, right behind us there. Is that the one that you're mentioning in there?
Yes.
Yep. Do you? I mean, we're going to discuss this later on today in this meeting. Do your members generally support that concept plan?
Generally, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there's been good, positive feedback on it.
Yep. There's been a variety of feedback, but certainly the surrounding businesses have.
So the majority of your members support it, particularly the.
The majority of the members support a revamp in that space.
Okay, all right, that's good. That's good to know for this afternoon. The continuing challenges, you've got public perception of the CBD. I mean, that's an age-old, but I mean, given that you're you've got a very strong membership base there, who do you think should own this public perception? And well, perhaps answer that question first, and then I'll follow it up.
I think everybody's got a role to play in it. I guess I was wanting to identify it from the point of view of particularly looking at our recent awards. We've got these fantastic businesses that really should be celebrated out in a public space for some of the amazing work that they're doing. Yep. So one of the things that we've been discussing as an association is how we can raise the profile of these individual businesses to, I guess, challenge that public perception.
So, I mean, as a lobby group, do you think there's better ways that we could do it collectively than what we do? We all sort of sit back and say, well, some will say it's council owns it, so it's their problem, and others will say, no, the individual property owners own part of it. Do you think that there's a collective way that we could actually work to get, and following on from Gary's statements, not duplicate, but do it together in a way that we can upwardly improve that perception?
Absolutely. And I guess with all of the groups that Gary was talking about before, and there are a significant number of groups, all that may overlap but have a slightly different purpose behind them. And I guess it's just that consistent messaging that we've all got. If we're all going out there in that positive space, the tide will turn.
Yep. Okay. Good. And I do appreciate the work that you guys do, but just on a negative note, I'm just a little bit disappointed that we haven't got a set of financial statements here, and we've got what I would regard as the kind of treasurer's report that I would get at a tennis club or something on page 29. I just wonder if perhaps in future years we could have a full set of financials, even if the audit hasn't been done, or perhaps we delay you reporting back perhaps to the subsequent meeting.
I think, Rob, it has been done, is my understanding, but we traditionally haven't had the full accounts, except for one occasion where we had really wanted to delve into it and prepared that in advance. So it's not the CBA's fault, it's more ours, probably.
Okay, because I would, there's public money involved here, and I think it's important that we do have financial statements that...
It's a fair point, and Kelvin...
Yeah, so what we've often done is we've done a report now with the preliminary results, and then when they are audited, we then bring them back as a separate report for information.
So that report will come back to this meeting, will it? Not just come back to you guys and...
No, we can bring it back here.
Okay.
And we've done that in the past. We've separated them.
Okay, thank you.
Those audited accounts will be ready for our AGM in October.
Okay, thank you.
October.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And your great awards night the other night.
Thank you.
Really well done. I liked the revamped brand. Just following up, Vanessa, on the comments you made about Garden Place, I just wanted to drill down a little bit into exactly what the members have seen and how they were sort of consulted on, and it wouldn't have been terribly formal, I don't think. We just need more of an understanding, because I think you said that the majority of members support a redevelopment of Garden Place. You didn't say the majority support the particular private proposal that we've got. So can you talk
so
me through that?
the concept plan has gone to all of the surrounding businesses around Garden Place, primarily via Steve. And so they have been taken through that, and there was unanimous support within the surround. We did put it out to have comment from further members. Most didn't take the opportunity to comment, but there has been some general comments made about whether roading was the way. I know it was in the CCTP, so I think for some people may not have seen or may not have understood that there was some potential planning around roading through that space. But as I said, most people do support or have spoken in terms of wanting a revamp in that space.
So it's not the majority of members who support it. It is so you've got unanimous support around Garden Place. So how many businesses are around there?
I'd have to get Steve to qualify how many he spoke to. I know that there's the retail surround.
Couple of dozen. Okay.
Just come on, Angela.
Okay, so all right. So I'm just trying to get. We often hear these things that people support and majority and things like that, but it's got to be qualified through the numbers. So a couple of dozen people unanimous, that's great. I guess you could say that they're most affected, but you have 1,600 members?
About 1,200.
About 1,200, okay. And you didn't really get a lot of response from them?
No.
Okay, all right, that's what I need to know. Thank you. And just one question on, and really great actually to see in your report and the first page of your report, which is our page 25, that you're talking about the significant commercial developments underway in the city, and you've put a list there, and that's considerable, and you've also guesstimated, I guess, 1,700 more workers in the CBD, and that's really positive. So I really appreciate you putting that in black and white. The ASB building on the corner of Bryce and Barton, what is that going to be?
That one down where Bed Bath and Beyond used to be. So they're actually bringing in all their branches into there, all their city branches. So, the Anglesey Street, the one up on the hill.
So it is going to be a walk-in bank?
I haven't seen the plans for it actually.
All right.
But certainly I've just been talking about it. Well, the talking that I've had with ASB has just been that's where they'll be represented in the city now.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Great report. Thank you.
Thanks. Siggy?
Thank you so much for your report. Look, just one little question here, and I just want some clarification. Sure. Is on page 28 or under collaboration projects, and I just wonder what you meant by building awareness of Hamilton. What does that actually mean?
Oh, sorry. Can you direct me?
Under collaboration 3.1, Hamilton Host.
The first paragraph.
The Hamilton Host. Project.
Yeah, the project.
So that's one that Jason Dawson and I are working on together with the New Zealand Tourism Board about actually taking people through the highlights of Hamilton.
Okay.
And so it's essentially trying to get people saying the same messages within Hamilton, and also people coming in from the outside to visit, so that the highlights, the great things about Hamilton, the central city, are known. So. I mean, my go-to example is always someone hopping in a cab at Hamilton Airport and saying, no, now where to? What do I do? And actually, people particularly in the service industry, to actually have those answers available and know some more about the great things that make up the city.
Fabulous. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sarah and Vanessa. No, it's good. And we do appreciate the good relationship we have with your organisation nowadays. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, councillors, I'll move the resolution on page...
I'll second it and speak briefly.
Yeah, well, let me move it first. just keep in your seat. The recommendation is that the Growth Infrastructure Committee receives the report from the Hamilton Central Business Association. Moved by me, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, who's desperate to speak on it.
No, well, I'm not desperate. I just want to obviously compliment the association and the excellent work they do. And I think I unfortunately couldn't get to the awards the other night, but all the feedback I've had, it was a fantastic event. And obviously it celebrates some wonderful entrepreneurs and people of vision. I think I also think around some of the good news, you know, obviously we're seeing those indicators, and I think, you know, cross fingers that the Regional Council project comes, and the Regional Council, along with the excellent governance of the DHB, obviously have excellent vision and foresight to locate in the CBD. I'm only sorry that the Minister of Inland Revenue couldn't have told the Inland Revenue Department, which they would do in Australia. The Minister would just pick up and say to the head of the department, we want to be part of a CBD revitalisation. We can't tell you where you locate your IOD, but it will be in the CBD. You know, I mean that stands to reason. I'm hoping that we can renew those kind of discussions with central government, because I do think central government agencies have a crucial part to play. And okay, having said that, delighted that we do keep the inland revenue jobs in Hamilton, but I think that's really exciting. And I think that, yes, just compliments. I think the other thing I'd say to our council colleagues, the Central City Transformation Plan was approved and adopted by the previous council. Obviously, I'm broadly in favour of that transformation plan, but it would be quite a good idea, in my view, to have a bit of a sort of, dare I say, a workshop so that this new council, and we've had quite a significant turnover of members, owns it, calibrates it, adjusts it, because I think it's very important that in view of all these exciting developments, we do hopefully speak with one voice. And there are some other developments which in pink pages I would be very interested to hear about, because there's some other, I think, some quite good stuff to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I do think you strayed off the topic of the HCBA just a little, but never mind. I'm not inviting you to speak again, though. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I share a lot of Martin's comments, or Deputy Mayor's comments here about complimenting you guys. This is really exciting, this plan. There's a lot of vibrancy to it, a lot of really cool ideas. I've really enjoyed the association with you in particular, Vanessa, during the parking task force and that sort of stuff. And the thing I love about working with you guys is you're not backward and coming forward with your ideas and opinions, which is fantastic, because it means that we're working collaboratively. And as Dave said, it's a great relationship, and great things can happen. I love the fact that you're not totally focused on just being a shopping centre anymore. You're being a real destination, and you just the host program, dare I say, it's very similar to an ambassador idea. It's just fantastic. It's going to involve the locals of Hamilton, and that's something I intend to bring up with Tourism Waikato in Hamilton next. The kind of stuff you're doing is modern, it's forward thinking, it's also efficient. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. So great work, keep going, anything we can do to help. Fantastic.
Thanks. Councillor James.
Look, thanks for the report, Vanessa and Sarah. Fantastic. And I'll reiterate what Councillor O'Leary said before about the awards the other night. It was good, and it's good to celebrate success in the Central City as a city. I think we've got a point of difference from other cities here, where we've actually got people with vision, and you know, the likes of yourself and your comrades at the back here, for the city and where we want to go. So we have got a point of difference to other cities. You know, we could easily end up like other cities stuck in the past, a bit like probably Palmerston North. And I think we're going ahead, and I like it. Congratulations.
Thanks, James. Okay, councillors, I'll put the resolution. Those in show of hands, those in favour, against, it's carried unanimously. Thanks. We need to move on. Thanks very much, Sarah and Vanessa. On to Tourism Waikato, get this right, Hamilton and Waikato Tourism Limited. That's the old name, Tourism Waikato. That got us in trouble once before. Jason.
I just want to pass on my apologies to my chair, Annabelle Cotton, who was unable to attend this morning's council presentation. Thank you. And I have Don Scarlett here. For those of you who do not know Don, he's Key Relationships Manager for Mercury, and he's also on our board at Hamilton Waikato Tourism. So thank you all.
Thanks.
I'll please take your report as read, but what I have done is just done my traditional, a few highlights, just to take you all through from that report as well, just to make sure that you're pretty clear on what we have achieved over the last 12 months as an organisation. So look, first up is obviously with regards to our key statistics and our measures. So we are contributing now 1.442 billion into the regional economy every year. So this has blown our original visitor strategy goal of achieving 1.25 by 2020 as a city and a region. We are now obviously in huge growth mode. I just wanted to point out again, domestic visitors still contribute our biggest amount to our city and the region at 1.08 billion is coming in, with 364 million coming in from international. So again, we're still a highly attractive domestic destination, and I'll talk a little bit around the split between leisure and business travel in here. For us, for commercial accommodation, we're at 1.42 million. That's our tracked one through our holiday parks through to hotels, but down below you will see the 7.28 million with regards to estimated guest nights. That's tracked through cell phone coverage into the city. So again, more people coming here, visiting friends and family, staying in Airbnb, and obviously coming to stay in other non-commercial accommodation in the city. Australia is still our #1 visitor market, so look, I won't dwell too much on this slide, but again, our growth figures are projecting that by this time next year, we'll be hitting easily 4 million visitors coming into New Zealand. With that growth, of course, we can discuss some of the challenges around trying to manage the experience and obviously manage the infrastructure as a city, particularly around some of that growth that is coming into the city as well. Why are international visitors coming here? So this is from the latest International Visitor Arrival Survey. So again, holiday and vacation is obviously top, which is what we would expect. We're a bucket list destination as a country. However, the most interesting one is conference and convention, which is the 4th bullet point down there. And that has now grown to around 11%. We will easily achieve in the next few months. So look, business events are quite a big part for us as a country. I can answer questions later if you want to know more around the international convention side. For us though, we are pitching quite a lot for international conventions, but again, I will talk about some of the challenges on why we probably couldn't attract bigger conferences here based on a commercial accommodation. We have 7 performance targets that we sit down and agree with our 7 local government partners. So that's yourselves through to Waipa, Waikato South, Waikato Otaronga, Waitomo and Manamata-Piako. We have delivered pretty much, I would say, we've exceeded our targets, which is great. I won't go through line by line each one, but again, just the ones I probably will talk about, again, are the visitor awareness and perception. So this is a traditional Net Promoter Score that we've been measuring as a region for the last 2 years. For this coming financial year, I have adjusted that target because it is based on Net Promoter Score, and I'm sure some of you are aware of the Net Promoter Score. You would use that for brands with regards to products, but Net Promoter Score shouldn't really be used for destinations. And again, that is why, even though you might think it's a pretty measly -1, we have clawed our way back up from -6 in 2015. So as a region, Net Promoter Score is okay, and I still will measure that, but I'm going to start reporting on favourability. So favourability is really what drives someone to actually come here for a holiday or to do business. And favourability, and I know some of you just asked Vanessa questions around perception. I will talk about how we're going to address some of that favourability moving forward for the next few years as a region. Industry investment we've exceeded as well at 453,000, so that's around our industry stumping up to try and match the local government funding that we receive. And return on investment, so for every dollar that every council contributes to our activity, we are returning over $1,000 back into each of those districts and to Hamilton City. So a pretty good return on investment, and it's only based on our visitor expenditure and our commercial accommodation expenditure into the region and city. Visitor expenditure, particularly for Hamilton, again, domestic still skewed quite highly at 630 million. I was only able to start reporting on this from October last year, so hence you'll now be able to get district or territorial level activity with regards to the expenditure split. In comparison to how you're tracking compared to other parts of our region, of course, you're the blue bar graph there, so you're exceeding, and we hope you would exceed, considering you are the largest commercial centre for us and also our largest urban centre. So again, the next one down, probably tracking after you, is Manamata-Piako, but again, you're far beyond that. Commercial accommodation, as I mentioned before, we are now starting to see an uplift with regards to the results we receive, so 7.8% increase on previous years. This is a percentage year-on-year increase around guest arrivals into Hamilton. Our guest nights figure is also increasing, so again, only commercial, but around 667,000 people are staying every night in the city as well. And again, finally wrapping up some of the stats around how you compare to the other parts of our region. Again, you are far beyond. You have the largest commercial stock here, mainly in motels, which actually does fit a lot of our leisure and our business travellers. But again, there are great opportunities, as we know, for commercial accommodation and hotels, particularly in the CBD. Other areas that we obviously work on the marketing with regards to you as a city. So we focus on that with regards to international marketing and with Tourism New Zealand, domestic, and also our local and media and online. So look, just some high-level areas. I won't go through it all because it's all contained in your report. We do 2 major campaigns, what we call short escapes, where we promote Hamilton and Waikato into our drive market, which is obviously Auckland, and into our fly markets of Wellington and the South Island. We also run a Field Nights campaign, which was successful this year, and that's really around getting people, obviously, they spend a lot during the day at field days, but as you know, Hamilton is actually the major benefactor for field days with regards to retail and hospitality and accommodation spend. We also run a locals campaign called Explore Your Own Backyard, and that's really around trying to build our own reputation. With such a large visiting friends and family market, we want people in the region to actually know what cool things we do have here in the city and in our wider region. And then we also focus on Chinese New Zealanders because they're quite an influential market for their families who are visiting us. And then we run lots of other domestic activity as well. International, again, I won't go through the whole lot, but the big one that we're just about going into market again is the Tour of the North. So this is a $1.4 million campaign into the eastern seaboard of Australia around promoting the central North Island as a destination from the coasts of the Bay of Plenty through to the volcanic activity of Ruapehu, Rotorua Taupo, and of course ourselves as the gateway region. And then we also work offshore with, we see HCC, which is a lovely acronym, but it means Explore Central North Island. So again, we work collectively around the north. People come to New Zealand, especially internationally, based on our icons, Hobbiton, Hamilton Gardens, Waitomo Caves, rather than actually, oh, I'm going to go to Waikato, or I'll go to Taupo, or I'll go to Rotorua. So it's really around promoting our icons and attractions for self-drive market into New Zealand. Again, I won't go through all of this. It's very detailed in our report, but we do obviously do a lot. We host a number of media for mills. We train travel agents. We host for mills from other parts of the world here regularly, and again, showcasing some of the great products we have here in the city. So outside of the zoo, the museum, the Hamilton Gardens, we're getting more pickup as well from some of our famils around the urban experience that they can have here, so that fits in really well into the revitalisation of the CBD. Again, great people want to see attractions, but they actually also want to go out for great meals. They want to have some great hospitality, and they want to go shopping as well. Business events, so again, a huge growth area for us, particularly as a country, but also as a region. This was us at meetings where we won the best regional stand, so pretty much the Hamilton and Waikato region, I would say, owned that trade show. It's really key for most of our business event buyers that have come into the region. Overview of how we're tracking as a region. We are now the 3rd largest region for hosting business events in the country. So it goes Auckland, Wellington, and then Hamilton and Waikato. Of course, Hamilton again is the major benefactor of our business events due to the successful venues you have here, specifically Claudelands, Wintec Atrium, Mystery Creek, as well as obviously the retail offering that we have and the commercial accommodation. So as a mix, it suits really well. Business events travellers spend double of a leisure traveller, so that's why it's always good to have them here. Around $350 a day international delegate, around $530 a day for a domestic delegate they're spending into the city. And again, just one slide, which again is contained in your report, just a bit of an overview of the international conference bids that we work with Tourism New Zealand. So we're projecting that from the conferences we hosted in the last financial year internationally through to the ones we've secured into 2019, they'll inject around 6.6 million into the city. So again, that's on top of their transport and their registration fees for conferences. This is their discretionary spend. So again, business events are really important for us. And then lastly, growing our value. So how are we going to try and increase the value of the pie in Hamilton, particularly? So we have the Tourism Development and Opportunities Plan, which I've shared many times with you all, so I won't again go through each one, but I'll give you a bit of an update on a couple of them that actually are of interest to you particularly. So look, first up is the major event strategy. So we are now in discovery phase now with that piece of work. It's a key one that we're leading. We've also completed an events audit, and we are now working with stakeholders, with event promoters, with some of our event venue and hire companies here in the region around trying to assess and develop how we can grow our major events. And again, we have things like Hamilton Gardens Arts Festival, Balloons Over Waikato, and we have field days. For us as a region, people become quite lethargic. We don't actually have a lot of Waikato residents going back to Balloons Over Waikato. They'll go once with their family and then they will not return. Now, my thing with major events, if we don't continue to evolve, refresh, and actually provide a sustainable financial platform for them, we will lose events. But if we're going to attract new events, very much what Dallas has done with 37th South to bring the World Sevens here, then we really need to hold on to some of those new events and try and grow them as well. So, look, the major event strategy is really key. Hamilton is going to have a big part to play in that because we have got some major events coming, including Rugby League World Cup, but we're going to start to look for what we're going to have in the future, because after that, that will be our last big World Series for the next couple of years. Regional brand proposition and strategy. So I know that, you know, Councillor McPherson, the chair, slipped around introducing us as Tourism Waikato, and there has been chatter around this chamber, I hear, around us changing our name. What I would say is, number one, I'm working really hard to actually find out what our regional brand proposition is. What are we as Waikato? What are we as Hamilton as a visitor destination? So we're working through that program now. We should be able to launch the Waikato story around visitor destination by the end of the year. That is far more important right now to actually identify who we are as a visitor destination and how it will sell us rather than what we're called. Naturally, based on eventual brand journey, we might end up with a logo, we might end up with, God forbid, another tagline. But for now, it's around doing the things that we do well to actually develop and grow our reputation and improve it. And the best journey I give everyone, an example is Wellington. Look, the Absolutely Positively Wellington brand started 6 years before that brand was ever launched. It was around redeveloping the whole CBD, the city. You know, the weather has not changed in Wellington. It still was a windy city back then, but we are now drawn there. It is New Zealand's #1 domestic mini break. And the reason they've done that is they developed Te Papa, they developed the city waterfront, they launched hotel refurbishment programs. It was a continual 6-year journey before finally a brand such as Absolutely Positively Wellington was launched and everyone just knew it. So again, some of the stuff we're doing with Hamilton Central around the Hamilton Host program, growing our ambassadors first so that Waikato people become proud of us as a region, and then we start to do some of the things like the Waikato Regional Theatre, Victoria on the River. You've got some great plans for the River Plan as well. So again, we need to get a few more wins on the board, and then eventually when a brand, physical brand does get launched, people will just acknowledge that's what we are as a city and that's what we are as a region. So again, the brand journey for us at the moment is just defining our story, coming up with key messages and identifying how we're going to start to say those messages. So Neat Places Vanessa's talked about, that was a co-lab project with yourselves, Hamilton Central Business and us. The host program Vanessa's talked about, and then lastly some new products. So obviously some of the big part of the funding that you gave us 3 years ago now has been around trying to grow the development of product within our city and the region. So just some of the things we've worked on around it the last 12 months to get up and running was Good George. So they now offer brewery tours. Now that's quite significant from a travel trade perspective rather than free and independent travel, but we're now pushing through a number of travel trade going through that, which is great. Carrington Tours and Limos has now launched in the last couple of weeks, and that's really they're running a city tour as well, so a guided city tour, as well as some transfers, luxury transfers around the region. We've worked with Zeelong Tea around trying to develop their product. I know it's just outside your city boundary, but it actually, again, people are drawn by attractions, and Hamilton does benefit from that. The Seven support with regards to the bid Dallas put together, as well as now the active hosting of that event is key. And then hotels. Look, I know we've had many discussions around this table here around hotel development. It's fantastic that we're going to hopefully see an art hotel be part of the new Waikato Regional Theatre. It will fit a very certain demographic. We need more premium product in our CBD, and I know that there are 2 or 3 other hotels in the running, which is good to see. So hopefully once we get that, it is around growing and improving our reputation as a city, as a visitor destination. So we are full right now. I've just finished my last round of travel trade, and we've got travel trade, which is pretty much the big tour operators bringing their first and their last nights into the city. But unfortunately, we are full. So I'm now starting to spread that load around other parts of our region. But again, other parts of our region are also struggling with what I would call large-scale 4.5 to 5-star hotel accommodation. So that's probably one of the biggest opportunities as well as challenges we have as a city. And then lastly, look, I'd just like to finish with regards to the Tourism Infrastructure Fund. So you're all aware that we're obviously in election mode, so thank you, Councillor Gallagher, for reminding us about some of the changes that may happen. But under the current government, we do have the Tourism Infrastructure Fund. Now, unfortunately, Hamilton City, and as well as most of our region, do not meet the criteria for first round. And that is because they are currently targeting the government areas that have high visitor traffic right now. They are low ratepayer bases, and they do not have the money to invest. So unfortunately, most of our region has been precluded through the first round, but we are working really hard with the government and potentially with any other government changes around how they will adapt that, so that cities like Hamilton can actually still apply for some of the pressures that we need to put in, like river jetties would be fantastic for the city, as well as car parking at some of your major attractions. So again, we want to try and get more investment from the government, and we're working really hard with that as an industry, so no matter what happens post-election. But look, thank you again for your support. Look, really appreciate Hamilton City's support. You are obviously generating a lot of benefit, which is great, and obviously it's a great opportunity to grow as well as a city. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jason, for the great report. I've got Gary, first question, thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Earlier on in your presentation, you talked about, I think it was 1.6 billion generated through the region from tourism.
That's correct.
Presumably, if we look at that as being that's exports, isn't it, in effect? Is it logical to count how much Hamilton people are spending outside our... So that would be the leakage, wouldn't it? If Hamilton people are going away from the Waikato and spending it in Auckland or Wellington or something like that, does it make sense to net the two off?
It could, but each region does also report on domestic. So it does break down for you how much our domestic spend with regards to the expenditure of 1.4. So I think we can easily see where people are coming from. My thing is around obviously trying to make sure that we also show the other economic gains rather than just expenditure, because as you know, reducing employment, raising salary levels actually within tourism is actually a far more powerful tool for us to actually see how tourism is contributing to our economies rather than what you've touched on.
But how do we know that tourism is a net gain for the Waikato?
How do we know?
Yeah.
All of those figures are captured by MB, so really that's something that would have to raise.
So how much do Waikato people spend outside of our region?
I wouldn't be able to tell you right now. So I would say they would contribute very much the same as we would contribute in from Auckland or Wellington. So
overall, it's a even balance.
I would say so, yes.
Okay, right. The other one, another question is that 1.6 billion is because people are paying for things. I just wonder, to what extent do you think it's the market could deal with it, or it would be the right thing or the ethical thing that people actually paid to come to our gardens or to our museums and things like that? Would that have a significant impact on usage or patronage?
I would say I have tested charging, especially with the gardens, with some of our travel trade. You probably would see some leakage from there. People would actually stop going there. Look, the thing with the gardens is...
Why would that be?
And I'll tell you, it's a fantastic asset. I call the gardens a theatre. That's what it is right now. You've got an amazing stage there, but actually why would you pay to go into a theatre that has nothing in there? Now, yes, it is a fantasy garden and there are some amazing things there, but actually there needs to be more product, there needs to be more events, and there needs to be a huge change in the visitor experience there. Now, look, the gardens are doing a lot of work around trying to commercialise and actually develop more product in there, which will help, and that is actually where you'll get better gain. And I know, I don't know whether Lance still here, they're currently recruiting as well for a visitor destination manager to oversee the museum, the gardens and the zoo, and obviously that is going to be around trying to provide more commercial product, which people are definitely prepared to pay for. Okay. But at the moment it's an entry fee rather than actually adding to the experience.
Because, obviously hotels and restaurants and bars and even our stadiums, people pay a somewhat close to, the hotels, restaurants, bars, etc., they pay the market price, obviously. Our stadiums, the ticket prices might be, the price, but they all run at significant subsidies to the ratepayer. Like millions of dollars. So, I would see some value in us trying to get advice from you or other people on how we can actually get these things to come somewhere close to making some contribution to their cost to the ratepayer. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, go on.
We're happy to discuss. No, we're happy to...
Okay. And the other one, you just at the very end, you sort of touched on the fact that our hotels are full, I think is what you said. Where do you see that issue being addressed? How does that, because it's, you know, it's easy for you to rock up here and then people take from that, okay, the council's got to build a hotel. What are you suggesting? What are you, or are you just simply raising the issue?
It's an opportunity.
Okay.
It's an investment opportunity. I probably wouldn't see council actually building hotels.
We have in the past.
You have in the past. Potentially that is up to you if you decide you will get a better net commercial return on that, and I think that's for council to decide. So as a commercial decision, yes, potentially, but I think what I've identified is there are currently 3 sites sitting here in the city. They're greenfield sites, they're ready to go, and really we're just looking for investors to try and help underwrite that. Whether council wants to do that, I'm not implying
so which
council
the sites
should,
are you talking about?
There's Sonning Road, there's the old Les Mills site,
yeah, I know Sonning.
North Victoria, and there's Arts Post. So you currently have 3 sites identified now. That is on the Invest Hamilton website, so we obviously
They've been identified as potential, and that's
sites.
What sort of process has that been through?
I'll have to answer.
That's been through numbers of processes and been reported back to this table.
Yeah, I understand. I've been to presentations at signing and that sort of stuff, but they haven't been zoned hotel or something like that.
No, that's just been an indication of council previously that that's the type of development they'd like to see there.
Okay.
And then the hotel study we've carried out this time last year showed that there was a demand for a hotel in the city of some type. And we've since marketed that those sites would be up for developers, of which currently we have one doing some due diligence and interest in another.
Okay, so there's no formal process gone through.
And of course, anything that was then moved from a due diligence process to something formal would then come back to this table to yourselves for consideration as appropriate, because it would be council land, and the proposal would then be up to you to how do you forward that. So nothing has progressed to the point where it would come to this table as yet.
Sorry, no, I was aware of all that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yep.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary. Mark.
Thank you. Hi, Jason. Hi, Tom. Good to see you. And to all your team at Hamway Tourism. Hey, just a couple of things. Is the Hamilton population on your radar as potential tourists? Yes. I noticed you did a little bit of work in the Discover Your Own Backyard, which is kind of cool, but getting that circulating around and getting them experiencing local stuff a bit more surely makes them better ambassadors. How far down the track are you with that Discover Your Own Backyard program?
So that program's running for 5 years. Right. But we're currently reviewing it because it does happen 2 times. One, it happens in what we call our off-season, which is January and February.
Yep.
And the other time is in the middle of winter. So we do try and get more people during school holidays to take their families out and about.
Right.
I think that it's great that we've got more people actually going to our free attractions across the region. So look, you know, the Hakara Matas is my golden example right now for Waikato District. You know, that is just one of our iconic walking tracks, but now it is like, you know, Victoria Street during a half-price sale. So I think for us, we are trying to look at other short walks that people can experience within our region. But it is really around actually getting some access to some of our attractions. So look, Matamata Piako, residents all get a $10 access to Hobbiton during Locals Day. We're working with Waitomo now around obviously offering some sort of locals access to get in there. So again, it's great that we offer our free attractions, people explore, but actually people want to get into some of our paid attractions and have some sort of incentive to do so. So we are working with them around opening those up as well.
So like a Hamilton card to get into the zoo, that kind of stuff? Or if the...
Well, yes, potentially.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I like it. It's great. There was something that really piqued my interest there, the Native American Indigenous Conference. Is that going to bring in 1.7 million?
That's correct.
What's that about? Can you tell me about that?
So that's actually run through Professor Brendan Horowhetu out at the University of Waikato. So he is a member of this Indigenous conference group.
Yep.
They've never been hosted outside of North America. It's always been held there. So again, 95% of the delegates will come from North America. So just based on their travel and the spend that they will be here pre and post, they're having a large famil program as well while they're here. So a lot of them will arrive 2 to 3 days before the conference and they'll stay on at least another 2 weeks.
Right.
So that is where, yes.
Ah, okay, cool. I'm sure you sit around and have great blue sky thinking times. What ideas have come up as potential, and I know this is way, way out there, but what other tourist attractions could Hamilton provide to be a better tourist destination? Because we don't have a beach, so we've got to provide stuff. And the work we're doing around the river and the zoo is great. And what other things have you seen in your imaginations and your blue sky thinking?
Look, I think the river is something that you've all talked about many times in this chamber over many years. So I think that, that is your unique selling proposition. It's the asset you have, and I think you will see things once Victoria on the river is open. The riverbank lane is complete. Potentially the regional theatre starts to take shape. That people will start to see more access to the river. Look, your river, I think, is great, but again, the river plan, I fully endorse. More public access, more jetties on the river, which will actually promote more river transport.
Yes.
We are talking about with some more multicultural product to actually bring into the CBD. So again, we've talked about waka tours. Someone's come forward around running waka tours along the Waikato River through the CBD. So I think, look, your river at the moment is something that you can really utilise.
Right.
And I think the Te Awa Cycleway, look, that's going to obviously help, but again, it's a skeleton.
Yeah.
We need to provide some flesh on the bones around those cycleways and what that will look like.
Right, so you're talking like bike hire and all the ancillary stuff that goes around it. Cool, thanks, that's enough for me.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Chair. Look, thanks, Jason, for your report this morning. On our page 48, the performance targets, I'm pleasantly surprised that we're the third largest region against Auckland and Wellington for conventions and business events. How do they measure that? Is it measured by the number of participants or the number of events that we have?
They measure it by both. So they do a delegate day count as well as a venue count. So based on your venues report every quarter.
So it's kind of like a weighted, weighted outcome
That's
rather than one that focuses on. So do you think we're to capacity in terms of the number of events, or have we still got opportunities around our existing infrastructure to continue to grow that percentage?
I would say we've got huge opportunity to actually still continue to grow that. Look, Mystery Creek can hold multi-day, multi-purpose and mainly outdoor, which is great, and it's not inside a city boundary, so that way they can host bigger things and louder things and noisier events. You've got FMG Stadium and also Claudelands. Look, Claudelands could host more, it could host bigger events, but again, the lack of commercial accommodation is what's preventing some of our, what I would say, 1,000 plus conferences to come here for multi-day. They would want to stay in 4.5 to 5 star, and they want to have a guarantee that everyone can be on one site. So,
So hotels are our
that's your
challenge and opportunity to grow that area. Okay. And in the last performance target, the 1,092, which is the average visitor spend for council based on council funding, how do we compare with other regions, not with the others within our region, but the other regions around the country? Are we getting a good return at 1,092?
Yes, you are getting a very good return. I think the last presentation I did do a slide, and I'm going to be doing the same sort of piece of work shortly for this coming year, where basically every ratepayer in the region right now contributes $6 per ratepayer to tourism. So that's across the whole region right now, compared to potentially 35 or 75 in Rotorua, Taupo, Queenstown, Auckland. And they're probably returning, like at Rotorua, I think off the top of my head, they're returning around $135 back into the economy for every council dollar invested. So we were the highest with regards to our neighbours and also the high tourist areas. But I'm happy to circulate that again anyway.
Okay, no, that would be quite useful to have that. Last year, just to get that item in perspective, last year we increased our funding by 50%. The funding, and I think the other councils in the region did the same. You touched on product development in one of the slides there as being one of the outcome. Has there been any other major outcomes from how that additional spend has been used by your organisation?
So it's definitely what you will see. I mean, I could easily provide comparison. Our level of marketing has been able to increase, but a lot of that has also come from industry funding because councils did contribute more than actually the target was higher, and industry have actually given more money for some of those campaigns.
So proportionately, the additional funding has been useful
in all
rather
areas,
than it being targeted towards new opportunities. Or is there a bit of both in there?
I'd say there's a bit of both. It would easily be around 75% has gone towards new.
Okay.
A lot of it has been towards growing and existing.
Okay. So are you looking for additional funding
for this
going forward?
Going forward, no.
Okay. And just, I had this point with the last group, but again, we've got no financial statements from Hamilton Waikato Tourism. I note that you're a subsidiary of Waikato Regional Airport. But do you think it would be appropriate that we should get some financial statements each year that give us a bit of an indication in terms of financial accountability as to how the funds have gone and where they've been spent and so forth?
Sure. So our shareholder as an organisation is Waikato Regional Airport, so we do have audited accounts.
Yes, I understand.
And we've just produced our annual report, so look, that is readily available. It is a mix of funding though between industry, so of course industry fund us as well, so as well as public funding. So, but we do provide and we prepare audited accounts for our annual report, and that's also included in the Waikato Regional annual report as well, which should be available very shortly, actually.
So again, Kelvin, do they come to us, the financial statements for Hamilton Waikato Tourism?
I might that's like just comment on that. They come to us via the airport company accounts that we get every year in their annual report. But we can.
But they're consolidated into the airport accounts, aren't they? So we don't get a visibility.
Any granular detail, but look, we can easily ask Jason to provide us with the audited set of accounts if you wish. Bearing in mind this is a separate entity. It's a bit different to a specific funded entity like the BID. We are a purchaser of services, but there's no reason why we can't provide the accounts.
But we're also a funder too, aren't we, to the extent of just under 600,000? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Siggy, thanks.
So much for your report. That was great. Look, you talked about the river and usage. I mean, we have to, as Hamiltonians, the river is our major attraction, really, but also talking about the Te Awa Cycleway. And I mean, active tourism is a growth industry, isn't it, all around the world?
Absolutely.
People love walking, love cycling, love seeing it from a different mode than just from a bus or a car. And we had Ludo Campbell-Reid, the design champion for Auckland City Council, talk a couple of months ago, I think, here at Wintec. And he made an interesting comment. And when he spoke that New Zealand and Australia are the only countries that have got a compulsory cycle helmet law, bicycle helmet law, not any other cycles. And he said that the cycling is on a downward trend in these countries, while in every other country it's on the upwards. So and we want to attract people from overseas. And I just look at that picture, and I just think of Germans seeing this picture and thinking, oh golly, where do I get a helmet from? You know, and I just wondered whether you've heard anything about that, or would that stop people from doing more active things? Because I think the Waikato is fabulous for cycling.
Yes, it is.
As long as we make our cycleway
you
safer.
Asked the question, give them a chance to answer.
That's all right.
Rather than
I would say it is not a hindrance to someone to come here on a cycling holiday. But when you hire bicycles, even the one that you can even get right now from Novotel, you're actually issued with a helmet as part of that bike hire. So I don't think that actually excludes people. And look, it's no different. I always say to someone coming here and having to drive on the left-hand side of the road, look, that's just standard, and that's pretty much the rules that you'd apply to that country. So same thing for us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Just two questions. One about does the Australian market, particularly for the Central North Island, have more capacity because it's a 3 or 4 hour flight and is sort of the long weekend potential destination? And then the other one is just around further work. Is there any further work that we can done on the friends and relatives in terms of people here? Most families have sort of either expat Kiwis or ex-Kiwis living in Oz, or relatives, and the potential for locals to produce, to promote visitors.
Absolutely. So look, your first question, the Australian market can grow. They are our number one market, as much as New Zealand is the number one market for Australians. We do have 2 to 3 repeat visits normally of an Australian holiday maker over a 2-year period. So they are now coming to us. And again, the affordability of flights over the Tasman has actually made us a very attractive holiday destination. But we are growing the shoulder season. So look, at peak we are full, and that's across the country, but we've worked really hard. We've just finished a fire and ice campaign with Auckland International Airport into all the eastern seaboard ports of Australia about getting people to come here during winter and during our autumn season. And look, that had huge pickup, so that we've got Air New Zealand and Emirates now on board with that campaign for next year. So we definitely have growth for the Australian market, but it will be during our autumn and our spring, our shoulder seasons, where we can literally grow that a bit more. And then your last question about VFR, look, we kind of touched on that by getting more Waikato people to understand what we have in our own backyard and explore. And again, through success is really going to drive some of those positive stories out into the market. And I use the example again of CBD Celebration Awards we had last week. You know, it was held in the Riverbank Lane. Now, most of the people that had been there, even though they'd walked past it many times, had never physically gone in there. So again, we're quite popular going to our favourite places, and we're a bit risk averse about trying other places. And I think that's really about us just trying to showcase other places that we have in our region, that people get a second opinion of us. And if we're proud of where we live, then of course we're going to talk it up to some of our visitors and friends overseas as well.
And I guess just you said 2 questions. You got a third one.
Half a question. I guess just the quick point of you know, the major metropolitan 1.5 million, the sort of the weekender in Hamilton, and I know you use the Wellington analogy. How far along the track do you think we are or could become in terms of that potential weekend destination in terms of Greater Hamilton?
I would say that we are nearly there. Again, once the expressway is finished, it's going to make us a very attractive mini break destination for Auckland. But again, with that expressway, we're looking at other opportunities. Actually, Hamilton Airport could actually become quite a good hub for southern Auckland. So again, you could even fly and stay, but we definitely need to look at other types of infrastructure to make people stay here a bit longer.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, James. Last question, though.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, for the report, and also thanks for being the MC at the awards last week. You're very well.
Thanks.
Yep, you mentioned Paula right at the end, which is good. Look, I'm glad that Tainu have been spoken to about cultural experience here, because it's something that we should promote on the river. You know, we're better than Rotorua. We've got a river running through us. We haven't got a lot of hot steam vents apart from everybody around this council table, but we've got the river. So look, my question is, we've got some big facilities here in Hamilton, Gallagher Industries and Fonterra. Has anything been discussed with them about possible tours of their plants? Because that could be a bit of a drawing point for people too, because you know, milk products and everything else is quite big around the world.
Yes, so look, there has been discussions with Fonterra particularly around a dairy experience centre for the region, so that is one thing. Look, access to plants is a different story. Industry groups can be hosted there, but there is a lot of health and safety requirements now around actually hosting industry tours. So look, it's potentially not a revenue earner for us as a region, but I think access to our sports and agri-tourism product is a different combination, and that's something that actually could work. So we are working with some companies around developing experiences but off-site rather than actually taking them onto the industrial sites.
Okay, thanks very much, Jason. We really appreciate the report. Councillors, the resolution on page 30 is to receive the report. I'll move that, and Leo second it. Thanks. Hands up, those in favour, against, thanks very much, unanimous. Sorry, I'm having to rush things along here, but appreciate the report. We're going on to councillors to item 10, and after that we'll have our lunch break. It's a video presentation and discussion and questions that will follow. Matt and Steve and Brian, are you coming forward to give the video? And Amy's just getting it ready there. Sorry about the wait, but afterwards. Just said it. Okay. Who's...
Yep. Thank you for your time. This is obviously Garden Place, and I think you've all seen the video before, but it's again just going to run it through. So the process is that.
Steve, thank you. So the process is here. One of the reasons is I think we've all sitting around this table would agree that Garden Place then needs to be addressed. You know, like, and if everybody disagreed with that, well, we'd probably leave now. But I think this needs to be addressing it. And the reason why Steve, myself, and Brian have come here and contributing our time and resources to this is because we actually see this as a fundamental element of the city to represent who we are and what we are, rather than everybody sitting around going, what is that place? And the biggest question that we've had from the public raises the contentious point is car parking. We see that as critical to
not necessarily as a full stop, but as another part of activation of bringing people in, not necessarily for them to stay in there, but it's just another activation point. So I think that's critical. And as we grow up as a city, the good thing about car parks, they can disappear. Draw your attention to as well. And also with part of this presentation, and I think I did mention it last time as well, that we've designed it in a way that it keeps the core infrastructure in place. We don't want to mess with it, and the whole reason why we've designed it that it looks beautiful and is for the people, but we've also designed it in a way that it won't make costs blow out to $10 million. I'd like to think that we can save council and the ratepayers money. Look, we're not doing this for anything other than contributing to the city. So it's not, because there's been some backlash about these rich developers and investors, you know, trying to pedal their own boat and all that sort of stuff. Look, we're way too busy doing our own stuff to, you know, try and drum up some work for us to, you know, keep ourselves busy. So I just wanted to just contribute that to the conversation as well. But anyway, here's the presentation.
Okay.
He's getting strong though. Maybe we should talk about technology. Upgrade.
Streaming.
It's after the Holocaust.
Oh.
Process. This is actually part of our report, isn't it? So this it says the recommendation staff infrastructure receives the report. This is actually part of the report, is that right?
Correct, it is part of the report.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to be clear, that and a Waikato Times press release or something, or someone's.
No, this is part
It
of the
might be one of
report
our
to
press
us.
releases. Okay.
We'll discuss that. I think we've got the same white.
Okay, so we'll just if we
sorry about that, guys. We've got the same Wi-Fi that we had when Steve and I first got on council.
We'll just speak to the still images. It's probably best.
Apologise for that, guys.
Oh, no, that's just fine. Okay, so I'll just talk through the design. So there it is in its current state. And obviously, as Matt's already said, we want to have a space that we feel proud of as Hamiltonians. So we initially saw a plan to put 91 car parks back into Garden Place. And our design came about as a response to that plan. And under that design, it sort of would have seen about half the amount of green space that's currently in Garden Place. And we want to bring some cars into Garden Place, but retain the green space. And we also want to see some gardens come back into Garden Place as well. And the areas that we're talking about, I think presently we have about 1,400 square metres of grass in Garden Place, and pretty much no gardens other than the ones that are in the movable planters. The previous proposal that we saw had about 730 square metres of green space, so it was pretty much halving what's there currently. And under our proposal, we're wanting to keep the same amount of greenery through the space, and we'd like to pretty much put half of that into gardens. And part of our strategy is to disperse that green space throughout Garden Place. And that'll help soften the impact of bringing cars into the space. So we're looking to reuse, I think as Matt's already said, as much existing infrastructure as possible. Just on the screen there at the moment, you can see two previous versions, I guess the two extremes of what Garden Place has been in the past. On the left there, totally car parked, I think there's about 130 car parks in there at that stage that I counted. And then a later iteration in 1976 where it was predominantly green space. So our thinking to bring cars into Garden Place, the way that they circulate through the space is critical. And we looked at a whole series of different options, and we want to disperse the car parks throughout the space. And the idea behind that is we minimise the impact that they have in the space. So you can see the two pink lines there indicate how we'd see vehicles moving through the space. And they go in an anti-clockwise direction. And the reason for that is that it enables someone to go through the space, back out onto Victoria Street, and then do a loop back around. So I guess there is the possibility, if you did spot a car park on the other side of the park, you would have a chance of flooring it. No, not at all. Of circumnavigating the park and coming back around. There you can see it in plan view, and you get the idea of the cars in amongst the green space. I'll talk a little about the pedestrian circulation through the space. My screen here is going a little quicker than the other one. So we spent quite a lot of time in Garden Place, and we have done over the years, I guess, and one thing that we've always noticed is there are these strong diagonal circulation paths through Garden Place. And you look at people walking through it at the moment, they're having to sort of step around grass and walk over stages and through pebbled areas amongst palms and those sorts of things. So we'd like to sort of clarify some of those paths through the space. And we want to do that in such a way that there's a whole series of gardens and a real softening of that. So they're not hard defined paths, but they are logical circulation paths through the space. We've also divided the park into several different zones. And the strategy behind that is that one of the comments we hear quite often is there's a vastness about what's there at present. And we figure that if we can break it down into a series of more human-scaled spaces within the larger space, that will help significantly. So we're wanting to retain A in the top corner there, which is the lawn. We feel that that's something pretty important. We're planning to introduce better drainage in that area, which is one of the pieces of feedback that we had along the way. You can see it there, a reasonable amount of green space. We also want to... Sorry? That's A, yes. So the green that you're seeing there is A, and you're seeing some of the existing trees. And you can see the way that we've introduced some additional seating around the perimeter of the space. That's a three-dimensional view showing what it will look like from above. Okay, the central space, we've referred to it as the square. And in the current CCTP, it talks about the introduction of some fairy lights in the space, and we sort of see some device like that as being a mechanism to sort of further define that central space. And you can see it here on the 3D. There's just a bit of a lag. You can see the central space there. And there's an image sort of looking in there. So again, going back to trying to keep as much of the existing infrastructure as possible. We're fortunate to have some pretty good documentation of what's already there, and those are the fountains that are there currently, which are really well used by lots of children. The front space here, at the moment, we're conscious that there's a lot of events that take place. So you've got the balloons, you've got the Christmas tree, the kids' days, and we think it's important to retain that. So we'd like to have an area that's of a sufficient size that it can accommodate those activities, and when those activities aren't happening, we'd see that space filled with movable seating and planters. There's also some secondary zones, and we've got two here, which are the performance and sculpture areas. So at present, there's a stage which is used, and we'd like to keep that in a similar location. Part of the strategy there is that we can reuse infrastructure. We'd like the stage to face in two directions, so it can open on to B and C, the event space and that sort of central square. You can see a plan view of what the stage could be like. To the north, on the other side, an area that's designed to take some sort of public artwork. We think that's important for giving the space a vibrancy. You can see a view from a lower angle showing how you could have public art and seating also integrated. You'll note there too that we're looking to provide a bit of a separation between the vehicle routes and where pedestrians frequent. These are the two last secondary spaces, and these are playable areas. It's one thing that sort of featured heavily in feedback was that people want to see children in the space, and that would be something that will help activate the space. So the northern one here is a series of playable objects, much like you see in other areas. I think there's a lower view here of what those objects could look like. And then to the south, outside the library, we've got a slightly bigger playable structure, which we've shown here with a slide. But, you know, there's a variety of things that this could be. And I think as the design evolved and there was more consultation, we'd be able to evolve that idea. There's a three-dimensional view. And then I guess the end goal of the whole process would be that the edges would become active. And I think if we can do this work in the centre, it'll provide a catalyst for the shop owners to want to put effort into activating the edges. Thanks.
You others talking, Matt? Okay, thanks. So we're opening it up to questions now. But just say that we're not here today to make a decision on this proposal, but we're certainly here to understand it, and then we can decide where we send it next as well. That's open for today, but it's not open for this committee to say yes or no to either the whole project or to the particular design. So
I think we just got a couple other things that will clarify the funding strategy, the proposed timing, and the project delivery. Just if you just want to hear around that quickly. So the project funding is we've got some rough order of costs from a QS. So we're around that $3.8 million plus some consultancy fees. So I'd like to think that we'd raise 800K of that ourselves and contribute that into, and that's my commitment to it. And I reckon that's at a minimum. I'd like to see the project come in less than 3.8 million because, you know, we're not trying to carve out every single dollar here. It's actually a contribution of what we're trying to do. So I'd actually like to build the design up better and then see if we can drive those costs down. And then also around the proposed timing, well, that's up to you guys, you know, through funding and whatever, but why not? Let's do it today, you know, or tomorrow, because it's not getting any better. And I suppose the project delivery, we would like to see, we would be prepared to put our hands up to say, hey, we can deliver it privately and then hand it back. So, and I'd say we'd, the only reason doing that would save council and the ratepayer money. So those are the reasons why we'd want to do this, because we've got plenty of other work to do if you don't want us to do it, so that's cool. Yeah, so those are the things that we will commit to if this is part of that as well. All right.
Thanks, Matt. So we've got a series of questions. Questions rather than sort of big statements about it, please. Jeff.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, guys, for that and for all the work you've done on it. I was going to ask about the funding side, obviously. It's the first sort of question that comes to mind there. I mean, you'll be well aware that the council's had a number of cracks at Garden Place over the years, and I think there's very little public appetite for us to have another council-led one anyway. So we sort of spent our lolly on it as far as the public's concerned. So I was, in terms of the funding, you've answered some of that. So what other means are there to limit the ratepayer input into this, I guess, is where I'm going with this. You've mentioned 800 grand. Do you have any other ideas about, you know, how we can limit the public exposure?
Look, so far we've even had some consultants come up and say, hey, we'll do it pro bono. So Boffin Miskel have said, hey, we'll contribute to what they can contribute to the project. So that's just one catalyst of convincing the engineer and so on to go, hey, this is a community led project and to save money on that. So even down to the contractors and bits and pieces, we'll drive them real hard to go, hey, what about contributing to this for the positive of the whole city? So those are I suppose we'll use our influence as well as, you know, with council to say, hey, maybe this is a time to contribute because this is the heart of the city type of thing. So that's the drive around it. It's more of I'd like to think that we fund half of it, to be fair, or even more. So but I don't want to come out and say, hey, we're going to fund half and then come in with 200,000 because you'd be pretty disappointed in it. You just already have. Yeah, so.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
In Matt, in terms of leading the project, have you thought about yourselves as setting up a trust to set this up or something like that? Is that part of what you're looking at?
Look, we'll cautiously go ahead and say, yeah, we're happy to explore that option and do that. The only reason we want to do that is to save the ratepayer. You know, that's the only objective, rather than saying, hey, start construction or whatever. We're not trying to push our barrow at all. So I'll be the first to be knocked off the block on that. But we're happy to contribute if you councillors think that it's the best model to go on, and purely out of savings, saving the city money.
Sorry, Jeff, did you have more?
No, that's sort of that. Thank you. That's good.
Councillor Siggy.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I love pictures. It's always good to see it, and moving ones is even better. But just a couple of questions on. I'm allowed to ask on the design. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Design is cool. Just some thoughts because we've talked about before about more cycling and everything. So do you see the path as shared spaces for any kind of modality there?
Definitely, yeah. We've had quite a bit of conversation around cycling and how it could be integrated with the space. We think there's the ability to have shared spaces there, and that will work quite well.
Cool. The other thing is I'm into eating as well. I mean, flowers are great, but edible gardens, something like that, has that come into the thought as well? I mean, Bunty, you are into, food, growing, eating. We're all into eating, so let's be fair.
Yeah, that sounds great. I guess at this stage we haven't defined plant species or anything like that, so that would come as the design developed.
Okay, and the other one, I just looking at the different areas, and I've just been in Wellington for a weekend, and seeing pop-up cafes. Would there be something that you could see in that design as well?
I think one of the things with pop-up cafes is, I don't know if you've seen around the edges, a few vacant shops. So I wouldn't want to see council adding more commercial activity there at this stage. Now, that could be a stage 2 thing if it's absolutely vibrant and humming on the edges, then, because I think it's one of those things that's pretty, you put a pop-up shop that is not commercial in the centre, and the guy on the outside who's been there for years, come on guys, so I think we've got to be careful around that, but I think that could come in time. Now, the other thing around the design is around incorporating for farmers markets, bits and pieces, because we created roads and cars and traffic in there, so it can sustain the heavy weight and bits and pieces. So I think that could be another activity that could work in that space as well.
Yeah. No, thank you for your feedback. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks, guys, for the phenomenal effort you've put into this. It's very much appreciated. Just a couple of things. We have a central city library on the edge there. Are you agnostic, or do you have a view on is that figure into your design or your concept going forward?
I think Steve and I both have a view. What's interesting is
what is that view?
So the view is when we've consulted the neighbouring businesses. So we've probably spoken directly to about 25 of them, and there's about 35 in the garden place. Everybody's mentioned that since the library is closed, there's been a lot less intimidating people in the space. So that's interesting. I think the actual building, the library building, could be part of the activation tool or part of the process into that, so we could integrate a design into that process. But obviously we've just looked at the square, and that's where we've stopped it. So all I can comment on is that it's from the public and from my own observation, it has been a lot less,
Okay, so not putting words in your mouth, but you kind of, you're saying you haven't done much work on whether it should be a library or not. Is that what you said, or did you say?
I think since the library is closed, it has contributed more positively to garden place. Yeah.
Yep, cool.
So that's as far as I can say.
Okay.
Steve might have a different view.
And you may be you may not want to say anything, or you may not know, or you may have a view as to whether a library is the best thing for that, or the second best thing, or a woeful idea in terms of reinvigorating garden place.
From a commercial perspective, if I was a prospective building owner, it probably wouldn't be the up the top of the list of things that I would go chase to activate the space.
Okay,
all right.
Thank you. And this is the big question. You're doing this, well, you're suggesting this because clearly, and don't take this the wrong way at all, clearly you've got some private interest there, which is great. And great to see you bloody working and, you know, God bless capitalism. But we are also in a process where we're trying to, rightly or wrongly, reinvigorate the CBD. Has your focus been on reinvigorating Garden Place, or do you see any impact of this into the wider CBD?
I'd say in two parts. I think we need a town square we can be proud of, and I don't think we've got that at the moment. I think it's,
do you want to just expand on what a town square is?
Well, Garden Place is our town square, isn't it? It's the central public space, and we've had 43 years of pedestrianisation in there. It's slowly ground down and down to the point where it's attracts a lot of undesirable behaviour and turns away good folks. And so that's something that we want to turn around. But also it's about access for the retailers. So office tenants, I think, office space is in a good position in Hamilton in the CBD. 22,000 people a day coming in here to work and and visit it. But the retailers are doing it tough because we've squeezed their access to their customers for such a long period, for so long. And
what's caused that? Is that the
because they're increasingly destination shops in the CBD. You know, for our folks along Victoria Street there, around the corner, they don't want to be in a mall. Mall customers will have a large car park building and they can go and spend as much time as they want at the mall and very close by. As your own data shows, the average stay is 1 hour and 9 minutes in the CBD, the central area. It's a reasonably short period of time, and I think it reflects the nature of the destination nature of the shops in the CBD. For example, the Scullery in our building, or Bird, or
sorry, Stephen, can you speak up a bit?
For example, the Scullery in our building, or Bird, for example, in Matt's, they're very specific. Their customers are in town, and I've heard figures of 70% of their customers are in town just to go to that shop, or maybe grab a coffee as well, or maybe one other similar shop. Their customers,
so they're not here, what you're saying is they're not here to spend time in the CBD, they're here to go to the Scullery.
They're here for a short time.
To go to the Scullery.
To go to that shop. Yeah. And then get out there, and they don't want to spend 20 minutes getting in and out of a building and going around and round for the park and politic and that sort of thing. And just the fact that 85% of the central car parks are occupied, or that they're occupied 85% of the time, I think reflects that they're in high demand. I certainly, for my part, I don't know if the other guys agree, but when something's in high demand, you don't put the price down. You might put it up, but maybe you increase the supply of it.
Your turn.
We get quite an interesting perspective of things, I guess, because we're involved in a whole lot of different design projects. So we see the likes of Matt's South Block and this Riverbank Lane and the VOTR and Genesis and all those sorts of things. There's a lot of exciting things happening in the city at the moment, and it just feels that the public space perhaps needs to catch up a little bit. I think when VOTR opens, it's going to be a great catalyst for people to start feeling proud about the city. But Garden Place, as it currently is, I think there's a bit of work that needs to be done just to bring it in line with everything else that's happening.
Okay, and that brings me to my next question, and I've asked this when you did your presentation. VOTR is on the way, it's not there yet. To me, and I'm not an architect or a gardener of any sort, but VOTR, does it compete with Garden Place? Does that, and compete's the wrong word, does it provide the same amenity and service and play space for the kids and that sort of stuff that Garden Place has? And I guess that leads to another question which is not directly related to what I've just said, but so I guess there's the competition, or it's already been done, for the amenity you're trying to get at Garden Place has already been done at VTOR. And then if the problem is car parks, and I've raised this with you before, why not just make that a bloody big car park? If the problem is we just haven't got enough car parks, address it and get some car parks.
So it's probably one of these things, it's a public perception thing, because if you're going to put 120 car parks in there, I don't think you ever get it across the line. So I think it's beautification. We're growing as a CBD, so I think that the language around the CBD dying needs to stop, because it's not, right? So we need to just drop it. Secondly on that, I think if you did just put car parks in there, we'll just have the status quo for the next wee while. That's my belief on it and take. And also adding 40 car parks generates another 160 to 180,000 of revenue per annum for for council as well. So that's another funding part that we haven't mentioned. But I think it's one of those. It is a good question because it is what is competing. But I think they add two different things because one is interface with the river, and one opens up the river, and this one here still allows for tourism events and bits and pieces that may not or will not happen there due to the size in its current state.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Councillors, just before the last two questions, just letting you know that I've prepared with the governance manager, the democracy manager, sorry, what are you? Governance manager, okay, I got it right. A sort of a where to from here, part B of the resolution. So we'll come to that straight after the two questions from Mark and then Angela.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for all your tremendous work. Great to see you guys doing it yourself. Thank you. Just want to drill down to a little bit of what Siggy was asking there about cycling. I haven't seen one bike in the video or the pictures or anything to that effect, and I know you've talked with cycling groups. What more could you do for cycling and potentially charge stations, cycleways? Because at the moment I can see the only place you could bike would be to either take out a pedestrian or get smacked in the back by a car. So how could you actually genuinely make it more cycle friendly?
You should once.
Yeah, so there are a few bikes in the renders. They might be hard to see and they might not be in the view that you're looking at, but we deliberately made sure that they were in there. Yeah, we do see it as a shared space, so we don't sort of see a dedicated cycleway running through the space. I think that people that bike also walk and also drive cars, and they can hopefully...
But not at the same time.
No, not at the same time. Hopefully they can actually work together as they do in other spaces. I think as the design develops, it's something that we'll want to give a bit more thought to as well.
Right, because I guess the reason for my question is that we're going to have a DHB with a whole bunch more people over one way, then potentially we're going to have Waikato Regional Council over that way with everyone sort of whooshing through, and people hopefully will get to those workplaces on alternative transport. So I just would probably really stress hard the futuristic look at cycling in there, and also ride sharing. With the Uber generation coming up shortly. I was really encouraged to hear you say, Matt, these car parks don't have to be there forever. Is that what I heard from you? Could you just elaborate on that just a wee bit?
I think it's one of those things. As a city, we don't have the public infrastructure, public transport infrastructure in the place at the moment. I'm a classic. I live down in the far end of Anglesey Street. I drive my ute to work and then drive a scooter around town. So I use two parts of transport, and I'm within 300 metres of CBD. So I think we're a city that we still want to park out the front. So until we grow up as a city in that mode, I think we still need cars here. Now, how long is that going to be? I'm not sure. So with the self-driverless cars and Uber and all that sort of thing, they can be depleted. At any point we can say, hey, take the cars away, and we don't have to pull up the car parks. They're still, because it's a shared space, we can just put more gardens and bits and pieces in there. So that was my thinking around there.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is how far ahead have you designed this, or have you decided something for now?
Oh, look, I think we've designed it in a space. People could say that we've designed it.
Sorry, guys.
No, that's all right. It's a design for, I would say, 10 to 15 years now.
Okay.
And I think it's a design that's sympathetic to all the infrastructure. So I don't think it's a redesign. It's changing the wallpaper.
Right.
This design.
Yeah. Okay.
With enhancements in areas, and then bringing in some critical things like the playable areas that will bring activity in the car park. So those are the two focuses that we've tried to drive on this scheme.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, and Angela.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do either of you own any buildings in Garden Place?
Our family does, yes.
So on the northern side, is that right, Steve?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you have plans to purchase any more, either of you? No, and I'm being genuine in my question about that, because the CCTP delved right into the actual issue, and Steve, I disagree with you. I think you made a comment around the look of Garden Place has created the decline. In the CCTP work that was done, I think there was a sort of a stock takedown of owners of Garden Place, and a lot of them, one of the issues was that there was a lot of them, and two was that actually there's a lot of overseas, so they're just not interested. And that to me is the issue, is the fact that we've never had really any, I think DIC might have been the last time we had some really good active retail in there. So that's an issue. So do you know differently? Do you know other owners of buildings in Garden Place? Do you know if there's a willingness to, from building owners to invest?
Oh, I think, can I just say that? Yeah. Hamilton City Council own a building in Garden Place, and I'd probably throw the question back to you guys as well, because I think it's, I think from Steve's perspective, you know, because I think you're just touching on, are you touching on anything around conflict here?
Oh, no, not at all.
No, and I've
not
been
at all.
close to keep an eye on that, Matt.
Yeah,
so
because I think that's potentially.
I'm very happy to answer that, actually.
Steve's always been open about his ownership of the building over there.
The corollary of the potential for us to lease space more easily, because there are a number of vacancies there, is that we have, over the last 10 years since the GFC, made significant reductions in people's rent. So it's not that, you know, yes, we may benefit from this in future, but I'd put just our corner of Garden Place, the amount that I've conceded in rent the last 10 years at about $500,000.
Yeah, that wasn't where I was going, and I apologise if I wasn't clear. In actual fact, I would be more supportive of the proposal if you both owned the entire space, because the issue is the inactiveness of good retail there, and the terrible store frontages. So that's
Angela, you're starting to get into speech.
Sorry,
questions.
I was.
I understand the question.
That's where I was going
A big
with
part
that.
of the problem in Garden Place is that you've got a large number of buildings that are in proportionate ownership.
Yes.
They're unit titled.
Yeah.
Very difficult. You know, like for us, we could come in and build the Volare Cafe and the lift foyer. If you had a unit titled property, you'd need to form a committee, and it would never get done. And also, Garden Place certainly makes a significant contribution to the rates demand in the city. It's, we're looking at the highest land value in the city, and the commercial differential on top. I've said to you many times, our corner of Garden Place pays close to a third of the rates of Chartwell Square. Chartwell Shopping Centre has 1,000 car parks, and it's thriving.
Do you have a view on, and as an example, and I wasn't on council when Hood Street was done, so let's put the price tag of $6 million aside, there was already quite an active hospitality industry down there. The council of the day did it up, and then those businesses also then invested and did up their buildings to match. Because we don't already have that active, fully tenanted, really good retailers in there, are you still confident that, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, isn't it, that a redevelopment of Garden Place, because council has done it significantly once in 2010, and nothing happened, nothing has changed. So what makes this different, and how confident are you that it will change it once and for all?
We're increasing access to customers.
By roads and car parks.
I think that one of the things is activating with car parks, right? Because I think most of the people aren't afraid of paying $2 in the CBD. It's a supply issue, and that's our view from the private sector. The other thing about it is Steve and his family are committed to this property for a long time, and I think this is one stage of many. I don't think we can just paint it and it's going to be the silver bullet. So there is risk exposed to this, but we ain't going anywhere. From Steve, I don't own any buildings in Garden Place,
but it's still going to benefit. It's
going to benefit, but we're not going anywhere. So I suppose the energy is, hey, we're not coming here to convince you guys today to fund this, and then we'll walk away and make sure, and then everything will happen. I think there needs to be plan on plan to how we link Victoria on the River to this, and then the Victoria on the River to the regional theatre, and all these sorts of things. So it all makes sense, rather than just so often we go in micro, right, let's sort this, and then I hope the private sector will sort it out. I think there's an ongoing story here. hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, look, it does very well. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Councillors, what I'm proposing now is a resolution to say where this gets discussed next, not that we have the discussion about yes or no to it today, to the concept. And so I'll just read out, and it's going to go up on the board as well. Firstly, that we receive the report, obviously, and part B, that we request the Chief Executive prepare a proposal on the Garden Place redesign concept, that's the one we present today, for consideration through the 2018-28 10-year plan process. Now, that implicit in that is that the consultation about this concept or any variation thereof would be within the 10-year plan consultation that we have early next year. So that covers both the where we hear it and how the public gets involved in it. So that's the proposal that I'm going to move that to get on the table, seconded by James. It's not meant to shut debate off, but it's meant to put it in, I guess, in context with the rest of our 10-year plan discussions. And it's also where the CCTP would come into play, would be considering that at the same time. So that's the purpose of doing it like that. But look, any questions on that first, and then we'll go to debate?
Could I just suggest, Chair, a slight change in the wording that requests the Chief Executive to engage with, and I'm not sure how we describe the group over here, because we have already kind of an offer on the table that we have the private sector wishing to engage in the redesign concept, rather than it suggests to me up there that the proposal is a council-driven...
I take your point.
So I'm just looking for the right words to go there.
Yeah. Look, as a suggestion, because of the time, let's work out the wording of that. We'll come back after lunch, but we won't come back, I'm afraid, to this item because we've got people that we've already invited to speak on cycling, the 2 items on cycling. Then we'll do this straight after that with a prepared resolution that covers off that angle. And I'm not, just wait, Gary, I'll get to you. And then we'll have a discussion, a debate on that point. But we'll word it so we incorporate that stuff over lunch, Rob. I think that's a very fair point. Gary, on the...
A suggestion, can that, I mean, this could be done earlier than the 10-year plan. So are you specifically, you wanting it to be weighed up along with the 10-year plan? Because if we go ahead with this, with all due respect, it's not a huge project for us if we want to go ahead and do it. Does it need to say consideration through the 10-year plan?
Well, yeah. I don't think that hurts your premise, Gary, because if the 10-year plan discussions are going to start in a month's time, so we have to have it back then, and if we chose to do it...
Bring it forward, we could.
Bring it forward, we could, at that time, we could just as easily do that. You know, we'd have to work out the money, of course, but we have to have... This requires it to come back sometime in October, I guess, Chief Executive.
So we're planning to bring the first opportunity for council to vote on a budget, I think 18th of October.
Yeah, so the time frame would allow your possibility, Gary?
Yep.
Just as an indication, we've got a number of, there's got to be the base budget, whatever way that lands. There's also going to be the items that we haven't funded or we have funded as proposals supporting them. And a number of those proposals we don't necessarily have resolution behind them, we're just going to bring them back. So, by all means, put resolution forward, but if there's enough all around this table, a half page summarising what Matt and team have just discussed will come forward regardless.
I think it might be a bit more than half a page. That's why I struck that out of the resolution.
I'm trying to be minimalist.
No one believes the report is serious if it's only half a page. It's got to be at least 2. Sorry, but I don't want to have the debate on it now. Let's work out some wording that covers the points that people have been raising. Have the debate as soon as we've done the cycling items, which will be 1:40 will come back. 1:45 it better be. Sorry. It's just sorry for the time, guys, but I imagine it'll be about 2:15-ish, if that's okay. Yep, all right. So let's break now. We'll work on some wording and come back.